the special meeting of the Willits Unified School District Board of Trustees is being called to order on September 25th at 9 o'clock. And I will ask, Jennifer's not here, so I'll ask April to lead us in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, we need an approval of the agenda.
I move to approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public comment. Is there any public comment on agenda items? Is there any public comments on items not on the agenda? All right, then, so we'll move on to the purpose of this meeting, which is the board governance workshop, led by Eric and Uri.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having us. It really is a pleasure to be here. As I mentioned earlier this morning, I love this area. Mendocino County is one of my favorite spots in the world. And it is a pleasure to do these workshops. This is also one of my favorite things to do because it gets me the opportunity to get out, see the school districts, and see the leaders who are leading our small and rural school districts. And so you guys should be applauded for what you do. It is one of the most important jobs and roles in government is school board. If you can imagine, I mean, everybody thinks, well, the president is the most important elected official, right? But the reality is what you do at the local level. This school board is the most local level of government, right, and politics. And what you do has the most impact in your community and across the country, really. And what the president does, for the most part, doesn't affect us all that much, or it takes a really long time to affect us. But here, locally, what you do and what you do with kids is what makes a difference. And so you should be applauded for stepping up and taking these roles, right? Most of them are unpaid. Some of them are paid, but most of them are unpaid, and doing this really good work. So I want to start off, I'm going to make this a little bit engaging because like everything we do in education, we learn better when we interact and when we engage. So first off, I want to talk a little bit, introduce ourselves, and then allow you guys to introduce yourselves and where you come from. And I kind of want you to tell us a little bit about why you decided to serve on the board and what's important to you as a board member, okay? But first I'm going to let Eric introduce himself, and then I'll introduce a little bit about my background.
All right, thank you, Yuri. My name's Eric Bonington. I currently serve as a superintendent with Placerville School District, and have been there for 14 years as superintendent. Worked really closely with John while he was there over the last, 4 years, while he was a principal there, and have known John even prior to that. And so you guys made a great selection, I gotta say, with hiring John into this role. 30 years of educational experience. I've been a superintendent for 19, and all in small school districts. And I think I love small towns, I love small school districts, and I love what we're able to do. I think in my opinion, a small school district superintendent or small school district board member has such tremendous impact. Because decisions can be made and changes can be made immediately. And we can do what's right for kids without going through a lot of bureaucracy. We can make those changes. You as a board can say, this is the direction we want to go. John can take that direction and the next day start moving down that path. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to really do amazing things for Willits School District. Just a little bit of background on me. grew up in Humboldt County. I shared a little bit of this earlier. My dad was a school superintendent up there, and then was in Southern California for a number of years as well, down right on the Mexican border. And so, again, all small school districts. Over the last 2.5 years, I have been the president of the Small School District Association, and have witnessed a transformation truly of what the organization does, and the focus on really providing high-level, student-centered professional development and impact for educators all up and down the state. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but the majority of school districts in California are small. I think a lot of people don't realize that. They focus on the big 5 or big 6 school districts in the state. But, you know, I mean, the majority, I mean, 2/3 of the school districts are small in the state of California. And so the impact SSDA has can be great. Well,
I mean, after all.
I mean, we
That used to
look-
be a sin, I'm so pleased to see it.
That's good. I mean, flexibility. That's a great thing. That's a great thing. So very good. So I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited. John asked Gary and I to come, and I think I'm looking forward to the next 2.5, 3 hours of time that we get to talk about the great things schools can do. So.
And I'm Yuri Colbron. I'm the executive director for the Small School District Association. I have kind of an interesting background when it comes to my journey arriving at this position, which I find to be really a perfect fit for me, and I love what I do every day, and I love spending time with all of you. But I started off practicing law, and I started off in the Attorney General's office representing public agencies when they were sued, mostly universities, and discovered that I loved education. And so from there went and served in a school district as in-house counsel for a large urban school district, Houston Independent School District, and then got recruited out here to California to a law firm, and have been representing school districts here in California for, it's been 30 years now, almost 30 years, and got tired of practicing law, because what I discovered was when I got the problems, they were already so baked that people were entrenched and they just wanted to fight. And as you probably have noticed in what's happening, everybody's really entrenched nowadays, and there's no way to solve things anymore. And so I figured if I could get involved earlier in the process, I could help eliminate problems before they got that far. And so I got out of the practice of law and started consulting and started working with school districts to try to solve these problems on the business side and construction and all kinds of different areas. And I ended up working for a school district as the CBO, as the finance person and the business operations side. And then just kind of transitioned, and then I was applied for this position when it opened up, and lo and behold, I'm here. And I have just loved what I do, and it's really been amazing to be able to support districts. I get calls all the time from folks saying, hey, can you help me with this, can you help me with that? And to be able to go in and support and see the success. And as you were saying earlier, April, and as Eric said, what we can do in small rural communities is so transformational and so different than what happens in an urban, large district where things don't move. I mean, I had a good friend who was a superintendent of Santa Ana. He went in and he found a library. When he first got hired, he went in and found a library full of iPads that had been sitting in the library for 2 years because they couldn't get them distributed because the IT department hadn't made it out to tag them or whatever. Think about that. And when I was CBO of a district, the superintendent would say, hey, I need this curriculum. We would go buy it, I would go negotiate with the company. If I had to, I'd go pick up the curriculum, wherever it was, bring it to the district, and personally distribute it to the teachers to make sure they got it the next day versus waiting 6 months. Imagine what happens to the kids in 6 months when they don't have a book, right? And that's what happens in urban districts, and so I'm super passionate about smalls. But we do have a lot of work to do in the smalls to make sure that we're moving the needle in the right direction, right? And a lot of that work is what you guys do as a board and what you do with your superintendents as a governance team. And so I'm excited to be a part of this. What I want to do is just give you guys a little opportunity to introduce yourself, like I said, and why you're on the board and what is it that drives your passion here at Willits, right? In terms of the education. So why don't we start on this side, April, if I can start with you.
Start with me.
We'll rotate it around, right?
The reason why I ran for board is I felt that we needed to have a parent on the board. At the time, I had 5 children within unified school district. My oldest graduated not last year, but the year before that. She works up at the hospital. I still have 4 within the district for the schools. I'm also the president of Willits Sober Grad. So I'm pretty involved. I'm a local business owner, and I just felt like we needed to have a parent on the board that was helping making the decisions that were affecting the kids and the families. A more personal, I guess, opinion or view on it, because it's something I deal with every day. I'm at almost every school twice a day, if not more than that. Either picking up, dropping off, or volunteering, or so. Yeah.
How long have you been on the board?
This not even a year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, this is my first year on the board. A lot of learning, still a lot of stuff I don't understand. So, yeah.
It takes at least a year to start to understand what your role is, right?
Yes, yes, and I've definitely noticed that a lot of the community don't really know the role of the board. They think that we have a lot more power than we do. So that's been a lot of explaining to like parents, when they're like, well, you're on school, you can do it. I'm like, no, it's not how that works.
And I think that's huge. I think that's a huge point right there. Is part of the job of a board member is educating the community what is the job of a board member, and helping the community truly understand. And I know we're going to get deeper into a lot of this, but really understand that, as one person, I'm just a community member. It's when we come together as a board and then we act as a board is when we're able to drive policy or drive direction of a district. Yeah.
My name's Jeannie King, and I have been on the board for 6 years, and 6.5 years. I was elected in 2018, and I'm a retired special ed teacher. I retired in 2005. I say I'm retired, but I really was a burnt out special ed teacher. I could still do the teaching part, or I could do all the paperwork and testing and working with kids in the other classrooms. I could no longer do both. The stress of it was killing me. So I retired, and I had no intention of getting on the board, and then in 2018, a sitting board member suggested that I run for the school board, and I had a grandson in the school district, and I had a granddaughter that was younger but would be going to the school district. So anyway, I decided that would be a good idea. I had 1 day to file, and part of my story is that so I had my granddaughter that day, and I was going down to file at the county office in Ukiah, and as I neared the bottom of the grade, which is the hill between here and Ukiah, I saw this lady cross over the double lines, pass right by me, and run head on into the car behind me. So killing that person and killing herself. And it's part of my story, if I had been 1 second later, if I had been in that lane instead of the lane I was,
You wouldn't be on the board.
I wouldn't be on the board, and my granddaughter wouldn't be alive. So that's part of my story. So anyway, it was a deliberate act. It was still sticks with me to this day. But anyway, I've been on the board for 6.5 years, and I decided early on that I didn't want to just be a board member, I wanted to be an informed board member. And I realized that being an informed board member is the only way that I could be an effective board member. So, I've taken advantage of all the CSBA training I can, and I got my master's in governance, anyway, so I've taken advantage of all the training I can, and it's helped me a lot, so, and Willits is a great community, and I feel that, anyway, it's a nice community to participate in, so.
That's great.
And how long did you teach in the district? How many years?
I taught, I taught a little bit part-time when my son was young, so, I taught altogether about 25 years.
Fantastic.
Paula?
I was waiting for you. I don't know, I have been on the board the same length of time as Jeannie, and before that, when I taught in this district, I went to board meetings every single month or twice, depending upon who was superintendent. And, because they would call for 2 meetings a month instead of 1, okay? And, I just have always believed, I'm usually pretty fortunate that I can explain what others need, and I really do believe that's my role in life as well as on the board. And I also truly believe we have a number of underserved community members. And my big deal was to make sure that they could at least be heard. And generally, you know, things don't change. I've been asking, excuse me, for similar things for the past 44 years, but some days they're good and some days they aren't. But we'll see. And I taught in this district for 41 years and 3 years before in Fresno. And there is a big difference between school districts. But in this district, I really felt the need to watch the board, you know, and except for about 7 years where my girls were just too young to sit quietly in a meeting, I didn't come. But all of the rest of the years, yes. And that's another kind of amazing thing, how behavior on the board is so different. And in Willits, it swings a lot from super conservative to relatively liberal. Almost no one is down the middle of the road, you know. And so that's kind of good, you know.
From across the country.
Well, that
Yeah.
is pretty much what I watch also, you know.
So what did you teach?
For a while, K through, well, we didn't have TK, well, I did, I used to run a summer school program,
Okay.
and we had TKs to 6th grade mostly.
Uh-huh.
But here it was mostly 1st grade for a lot of years, well, for about 14 years, and then another 20 or so were 2nd grade, and then I went to 3rd for a little while to follow, was I effective, you know, but that didn't last. I really prefer 7-year-olds over just about anyone else in the world.
Fantastic. That's great.
Dave?
Okay, hi, I'm David Milker, and again, like a couple other members of the board, I also taught in the district. I actually came here from Potter Valley, which again is an even smaller school district. Prior to that, actually, I was working in Sacramento, and came out here partly because I didn't like working in a large school. Again, I taught, again, like you know, I was a special ed teacher for a while. I ended up finishing out as a world history teacher at the high school. And again, so I taught here a little bit less than 20 years, a little bit less than 30 years teaching overall. And as to why I chose to be on the board, part of it was kind of the idea of sort of civic duty, civic participation. We want to have people, you know, serve in public office, which is again something that not, you know, there are situations where some things just go empty because no one stands up and decides to take the role. But also because again, I mean, I know that, you know, I've been working in the district for about a third of my life, and also, you know, again, I just wanted to kind of help see what I can do to sort of help basically keep the things that are running well and help fix the things that aren't running well. And as far as the issue of sort of, you know, the political aspect of the board, yeah, 'cause I've, you know, been reading about, again, just sort of school boards where people just can't talk to each other and they're sort of, you know, just
board member is that, I knew everyone on the board from before the time I was elected. Actually, in April, I didn't really know you that well before, I used to, read our, but, the thought is, again, I wanna make a point of maintaining a positive working relationship with everyone. But I think one of the reasons why, boards work well or don't work well is the ability for us to have sort of honest, informed discussions about, what's important to us and what's important to the school district.
Right. Thank you, Dave.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I have a rather different story. I grew up in New York City. I went to the high school in Spring Art, which is one of the two schools that fame was done about. Played violin since I was 9. I had my bachelor's in music, my master's in ethnomusicology. That said, I cashiered for many years before I got other jobs. And finally, I got a job teaching in Delano, and I had, the first year I had bilingual 4th, the second year I had bilingual 3rd grade. It was English, Spanish, and some Tagalog, but I didn't speak Tagalog. And I loved doing it, but I kind of open my mouth and say what I think, and don't always think about it. And I asked the principal why. That was during the time that we had English-only speakers in bilingual classrooms so that they modeled the language for the other kids. And I asked her why I always got the lowest level ones, the ones that couldn't read, the ones that had other problems, and she didn't like that, so I did not get rehired. And I got a job with Child Protective Services as a social worker in Kern County, and then it got too intense to be able to stay there and keep doing that job. And my partner at that time could not stay in the valley because she had chronic bronchitis every winter from polluted air. Doesn't exist in Bakersfield. And so we came up here. I got a job up here, and it was with CPS. And total, I did 28 years. And at that point, I was just done. I went back as extra help for 1 year. What I bring to the board is that I'm probably the only one that knows how to deal with the court system when it comes to kids here that are picked up without papers and to get them back to family members, be it here or in another country, because I had to do that on my job. There was one other thing I was going to say. Anyway, the reason I applied for this job, or signed up for it, one of the I was in Rotary for a short time, and we had to put on a presentation, and I'm part of the LGBT community. I work hard for marriage equality on a nationwide level, and we had and still have a GSA, Gay Straight Alliance here, and I got the teacher from that to come speak to Rotary because we had to do a presentation, and they were funded to go to San Francisco Pride by the school district. And I asked if they needed chaperones, and she goes, no, we really want to help the kids run for the school board. I thought, well, what the heck? I've retired. I have nothing better to do. And I'm not afraid of speaking. Paula can tell you that, or confirm that. And so I ran. This is my 4th year, and I'm intending to run again. And what I think I've brought here is I've helped make it a safer place for the kids who are LGBT. I also have my degree in ethnic studies, ethnomusicology, and that's been required by the state at this point. He was going to pay for it, Newsom, and then he decided he wasn't going to pay for it, and he wanted the district to do it. So now we're working on how we can do it, not necessarily the way the state put together a plan, because it's very political, and ethnic studies is about culture. What did you have for breakfast? Who's your family? Where did they come from? What kind of music do you like listening to? All that stuff, and we get to learn about each other, and we appreciate each other more. So, and this leads to the question about the board being somewhat politicized. For me, this is a thing about students, and politics doesn't belong there. And when I was president of the board 2 years ago, I think, I tried to make it so that we all were treated equally. we're getting there. We are getting there, also due to other people that have been working on that. So that's my story, and I love what I do.
Thank you guys so much for sharing all of that.
Oh, and I watch I'm on your video things that you do once a month.
The webinars,
Okay.
the board governance webinar.
Yep,
Oh, fantastic.
We've had some great speakers.
the one from Fresno,
Yes.
oh my
Well,
God.
he's the author of the book.
One of these books,
Of the
yeah.
books, And the one, this decision from the dais. Keith
Are
Wolverine.
there extra books?
Yes, I have extras.
Yeah. One thing I wanna share, because I always, you and I have done a couple of these board workshops, and the best way for this workshop to work for everybody is this is really a conversation. It's not a presentation, it's a conversation. And so, feel free to speak up at any time. Feel free to, hey, I wanna throw in my thoughts on this, or that kind of thing, because it's really anything that we can do to help, and that's why we're here, but really it's a conversation between you guys. Because a board, when you guys have a relationship with each other and be able to freely speak and not be offended and just be able to share ideas and really focus on kids, that's what it's all about. I mean, everybody here is about kids. And so I want to just make sure that you guys know this isn't a presentation. This isn't something that Gary and I are going to be presenting information to you. We have some things prepared. If we get through all of it, we get through all of it. If we don't get through all of it, probably better. That means we're having better conversations. And so feel free to just, like I said, as we start going through things, speak up, share, and it will really drive the direction of how this whole morning goes.
I have a little bit of a kind of an outline. I welcome suggestions if we want to do it a little bit differently. We wanted to start this really from the perspective of talking about the vision, a vision for the district, right? Because every time the board has a new elected member, it's time to really revisit vision and think about vision. How many of you were on the board when the current vision for the district was developed?
There we go.
This is why I raise this as a question. Because, so the first thing I do when I'm asked to speak is I go to the website and I look at the district's vision. When I looked at the district's vision, I said to myself, okay, this is, the district is gonna struggle with this vision. It is literally a page and a half long. It's got all kinds of bullet points. Nobody would be able, if you were to walk on the street and somebody were to come up to you and say, what is your vision for education as a board member, right? You have not come together and developed a quick, elevator speech, we call them, right? That says, this is what we're about. And obviously, each of you has a different reason for being on the board, but collectively, you've hired a superintendent because you interviewed and hired him. And I would suggest that you hired him because something he said during the interview really struck you as, this is the guy that we want to hire. And that's because he talked about probably a vision for the district, right? And so at some level, there's an intersection between what the superintendent believes is the vision for what he can do at the district and what you believe can be done for this district, right? And so I always like to start with vision and talk about the vision. We'll do the board roles and responsibilities and we talk about culture. If we can get through the vision, then you have a roadmap for developing a culture in the district that can move you forward, right? And when I say move you forward, every district has a little bit different view of where they want to go. I've worked with districts that say they're all about test scores. They want to be 100% every kid, right? And not every district wants that. There are districts that want different things. And that's what the importance of school boards are. Every once in a while, you get this resurgence of a conversation out there about abolishing school boards. School boards are bad, we need to abolish them, they're destructive. And I will tell you that that is the worst argument I have ever heard in my life. The reason that school boards are so critically important is because they reflect the community. They develop that vision from the community perspective. You are the bridge. You are a bridge. And I don't know, are you guys elected by areas or are you still all at large?
At large.
At large. So you represent the whole community. And different aspects of the community, parents, teachers, community members. You bring all that to the table, but you are the bridge for the various parts of the community. And you have to be open to all the community, of course, but you're a bridge. And so when you bring that vision and that desire for the community, you're reflecting what your community wants in education. But you also have to realize that that is a broad vision, and particularly for teachers, right? Because you've taught in the district, but the reality is you've got to let go of the curriculum, right? Because as teachers now, you are really talking about broad core vision, and you have to be supportive of the superintendent because you can't have 5 different people running curriculum, right? It doesn't work. It's like you can't decide you want to go in this direction and go this direction. You've got to band together and let the superintendent bring curriculum and give you, and you have input into that, but there has to be one person running curriculum. And that's the challenge with being a teacher, because you have sometimes a little too much intimate knowledge about what's happening in the classroom, right? It's a tough one, but you know what I find, I'll be honest with you, I've worked with so many boards as a lawyer and in different aspects. Some of the best board members I ever worked with were teachers and union representatives. When the union elects somebody, it's so funny, something happens, and you guys may have felt this. The minute you sit at that table and you realize that you represent what's best for kids, you let go of a lot of things. And you let go of whatever may have been the reason you felt you were going to represent X, Y, or Z on the board. At the end of the day, you realize you have this big picture. And you look and you say, I gotta let go of this stuff because I gotta do what's right for kids. So some of my best board members have been teachers and union representatives, which is, it's counterintuitive. But they are able to put on the hat and say, I'm now serving in a different role and I have a different responsibility, right? So let's talk a little bit about governance and the importance of governance. And Eric, you can help me here a little bit with the student-centered piece of this, right? That's what we all talked about. You've got to take the politics out. What's best for students? Remain student-centered in everything you do, right?
Totally. I mean, and in our district, our motto, vision statement is students first. And every decision that we make as a board, as we make as an administrative team, is what is best for students. That's the center, that's where we're looking at first when we are making decisions. And really I heard that from everybody here. The students, that's why we're here, is for kids. That's why we're on the board, is for kids. And so continually having that as a framework. Do you have kids that come to your board meetings?
Sometimes, yes. Typically, we honor
Awards.
sports
Students of the
teams,
month,
students of the month, that sort of thing.
We also have a student representative that will come
Perfect.
and give like an update on what they're doing at the high school,
Excellent.
but only for the high school.
And we have
Some-
parents that have their kids and don't have people to watch them, so sometimes they can.
Sure. One thing I would recommend at some point, and maybe this isn't every board meeting, but some is have them come and have the students do a presentation for you. Have them, maybe one time throughout the year, you have a student group from each of your schools that come and do a presentation as to something really cool that's going on their campus. And it could be the robotics that we were talking about, or it could be a garden program that's getting started or something like that. Have them come and do a presentation. It grounds the board back into why we're here when kids are present in the meeting. And so I think that I would be a recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. But I think it's important to always ground yourself back into why all of us are here. And it truly is kids. And so,
We start off our E3 forums, our regional conferences, we always start them with a student presentation. It really does ground and remind you why you do what you do. Why are you on the board, right? And it gives you an opportunity to celebrate. We don't celebrate enough the accomplishments of what we're doing in our programs and to create some pride. So especially if you have parents and others in the audience, let them see what the kids are doing, right? It creates a little bit of pride and school spirit, culture.
and if you look at the next two boxes on here, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on what those two statements mean to you. First one is board's role, ensure the district is run well, and the superintendent's role is to run the district well. What does that mean?
Okay, and again, this is something that, again, my understanding, I have more clarity on this than when I initially got elected. It's basically, we help to provide information to Mr. Baker. We have issues that we discuss among ourselves, so we have our own opinions on things. But again, we are, I would say, sort of like trusted advisors in a sense. And really, anything that, as I think Jeannie mentioned, we actually, our own role is rather limited. People think we have the power to make decisions, but no, we really, we are kind of going over some of the things that are sort of the responsibilities of a board member, and then just sort of giving John our thoughts, but not much more than that.
And supporting. You know, I bring a lot of issues to him that I hear about from parents or students because I'm there all the time, and I'm like, hey, you should call John. John, and I give him a heads up, like, hey, just so you know.
Hey, you're getting a call.
Yeah. But, you know, our job ultimately is to support him and to just help with the oversight. And
I think what you said is probably one of the most important roles of a board member is that bridge of communication, is giving him the heads up. Hey, X is happening, Y is happening, you need to know about it, because he may be here at the office or not aware of it. And then the other thing is, he provides communications to you all as board members, and you are like that front line to help explain to the community what's going on from the perspective of the district, right? You are now the district, you're now a part of the district. And so to be able to communicate that information, so to dispel misinformation, right? And that bridge goes back and forth. That's probably one of the most critical roles that you provide, to give them the heads up and to say, hey, you need to communicate this message a little bit better because the community's not understanding what you're doing, right? That kind of information is super critical.
So from when I watch a presentation online or over my computer, I often take pictures of some of the important slides.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was going through my photos this summer to get rid of stuff, cleaning out stuff, and I came across one of the slides from one of the SSDA trainings from last year that said, it was like 5 points as to what the superintendent's job and like 5 points as to what the board's job is. And I printed it out and
My guess is you'll probably see
Yes.
that here
Yes.
pretty soon.
Anyway, I printed it out and gave it to the board because it was so clear what our job is.
Does this look like this, kind of?
No, it didn't, it was a bulletin.
Bullet points,
Yeah,
okay.
but,
Yeah.
anyway, I found it really helpful and I thought it was really important information to share with the board because it was so concise as to what John's job is and what our job is, so.
Yeah. So the way I kind of see those statements, one, to ensure the district is run well. One, you're the big picture. As the board, you're the big picture. You're looking kind of from above. Setting direction, setting policy, helping guide where you want the direction of the board to go, or of the district to go. And John's the day-to-day. John's the day-to-day running of the district. And then his responsibility is to bring back that information to you.
He does that well.
Fantastic, that's
Every
good.
week we get a weekly update of what's
Perfect.
happening.
He learned from the best.
That's but yeah, to bring back that information to you, weekly updates, weekly newsletters, presentations at board meetings, data to show, you know, we want to go this direction with language arts instruction or whatever. Bring back that data to show what's being done, or share what we've done for professional development, that kind of thing. So John's job is to kind of be in that middle, but it's to share the information with the board while you set the direction that the district should be going. Yeah.
So I sort of have a lot of issues with this whole, I mean, like our vision statement here is very broad, and I understand the reasons for that. But I figure if all of us read it right now, we'd come up with at least 3 interpretations of what it each means, you know? And that is kind of difficult, and I have a lot of exception with the idea that once you become a member of the board, you're a part of the district, as opposed to, you really are still supposed to be the same rep you were when you asked to become on the board, I would figure. And I really do believe that teachers especially, and probably all of the staff, have nothing but vested interests in what is the best for their kids, and are usually more trustworthy in what they say because they have them all day long, or at least consistently, like in the upper grades, you know, and you see that cluster every single day for at least an hour or 48 minutes or whatever it is. And when it's in elementary grades, you see them all day long, more than their parents see them, frankly. And it just strikes me as a little odd that a board wouldn't be more interested in knowing everything that goes on throughout the district. And then, because theoretically, we have more time than the superintendent. And not that that's always true, some people are still having to work and carry on, but it just seems you get a pretty good perspective when you go to a school and you watch whatever, like a site council meeting, and you find out where money is spent and how it lines up with everything else and what they want at that school. Or you go to a teacher's room and you sit for an hour and say, life is good here. And then, you know, you find out, well, this is, except that happened, and this and that. And a lot of people, I know it's wonderful to say you never do retaliation and there's never an issue, and brand new teachers don't have to worry about their tenure being given or not or whatever. But that sort of isn't the truth. And what happens
I think it
is,
should be the truth.
oh, you and me both? You know, I'd love to see that happen, but it's objective evaluating and nothing different. We're not quite there yet in my mind.
Your expectation of the board.
Well, it should be, and I truly, but that's one thing that so many people can see in a different way. What is your expectation? I expect that their teaching, their management, their scores, their whatever, all make up whether or not they're a good teacher. I don't really care who they socialize with. I don't really care how they treat their private life. I care, are your kids going from point A to point B, or aren't they? You know, and we have a lot of issues with all those things.
So, but let me suggest a way to look at it, because I think the thoughts that you're sharing are very good thoughts. They're important thoughts. The role of the board, however, is not to get involved at that level. And I say that there is a level that you do get involved, and that is, as a board, you sit as a judiciary type role. So if somebody were to complain that they've been retaliated, for example, there is a process. So what is important as a board is to set the policy to develop the process to make sure that if somebody has a concern, like a retaliatory concern, that there is a process that they can raise the issue and bring it and have it raised to the level of the board, and then the board sits as a judicial body to determine whether it has happened or hasn't happened. The problem problem is if you get involved at the lower level, you're tainting your ability to be biased or unbiased in the decision-making process. And so your role is to make sure that the policy, adoption of the policy, to make sure that the policy is adequate to protect employees from that kind of behavior, right? And so the issue becomes, if somebody comes to you and says, you know, I feel like this particular principal is being retaliatory or is taking into consider non-objective, the response is to say, you know what, it's something you need to address with the superintendent. Because the superintendent oversees the principal, and that's his role. And if you really feel there is a uniform complaint process, and you should file a complaint if you feel that something has been done unfairly. So your role as board members is to ensure that that process is followed, because that's the law that's given employees those protections. Or, in the case of a teacher, they have a collective bargaining unit and representatives to represent them through that process, right? And to represent issues at the bargaining table to ensure that those processes are complied with. And so, it doesn't mean that you don't bring that perspective to the table, but the way to address that perspective is from the policy, that 60,000 foot level, versus getting in the weeds and the micromanaging level side of things. And the reason I say that is, like any organization, right? If you have multiple leaders in the organization, all going in different directions, the organization collapses. When I go and I see really dysfunctional districts, it's because the chain of command has been broken. If you go and provide an audience to a particular employee to address concerns, then they no longer want to go to the superintendent to have the superintendent address it. They want to go to the board members because you've opened that door. And then you really aren't in a position of authority to actually solve the problem as an individual board member. Only the superintendent can solve that problem. Is to say something happened in the classroom, the principal isn't addressing bad behavior by a particular student. The way to address it is the superintendent goes in and says, okay, what's going on here? He has the authority to make a change, a difference, discipline. A board member doesn't. All you do is open the door and create a circumvention of that process, right?
I'm not sure. I don't understand how the superintendent's going to become aware of issues that happen if, especially, and this has nothing to do with you, but anybody who was a brand new superintendent to the district doesn't walk in with instant trust and validity.
I hope you're sharing that information.
Well, this is what I would think would be my responsibility.
That is your responsibility. Share it with John.
Mhm.
And then I can just wait and find out that it's being taken care of, right?
That would be ideal. John, in his role as superintendent, is going to say, I spoke to this particular teacher, I got the information, and, collected or did an investigation or whatever.
And honestly, I think even a better practice would be, if possible, would be direct the individual to go through the proper change.
Right?
Generally, they
Have
already
they gone?
do that.
Have they gone to their site principal? Have they gone to John? Have they? And so have they gone through the chain and direct them that way, and then direct them through the procedure that's in place? Okay, if there is a complaint, this is the complaint procedure to go through, and direct them through that. Which eventually, if they don't agree with the decision that John makes, it will eventually come back to the board. Where then you as a collective body can make that determination on whatever the perceived wrongdoing was. And so it's a process, and I think it's important to maintain a process and have people understand what the process is. And I think a lot of times people just don't understand the process and understand that. Okay, this is the process, and this is the length of time that process might take. Because sometimes it's like, well, I want this resolved within 2 days. Well, it's not going to take place. That's not going to happen. But over the next 15 days, these are the steps that are going to take place, and eventually could come back to the board as a whole, and have that information presented.
And so if a policy is in place that's kind of half done and not all the way through the end of the steps, then it's the responsibility of the board to come together and finish those steps, or it's the responsibility of,
I think if the policy is not clear as to what are the steps to be followed, then yes, that's the responsibility of the board, because the responsibility of the board is to set policy. The responsibility of the superintendent is to follow the policy. So if a policy isn't clear and isn't able to be followed, then yeah, that's the responsibility of the board,
Put it on
is
the agenda.
to clear up that policy so that John can actually do his job.
even if okay, so if, we have a policy that I feel is incomplete.
Okay?
The first part of it is just fine. It doesn't go any farther, which leaves total discretion up to just one person. I have an issue with that naturally, but even, well, yeah, sorry. But even since it's good for half of it,
Mhm.
it just needs to be put on the agenda to be opened up to finish the way it's done.
And yes, and
If we have
let me make a
consensus.
suggestion on how that's done. You as a board, have, board president puts it on the agenda to say whatever the policy, uniform complaint procedure, I'm making this
Okay,
up, right?
that's good.
And you put it on the agenda, John will bring it to you, the uniform complaint procedure, you guys have a discussion to say, I feel this isn't complete. And maybe the rest of the board says, well, it's clear to us, right? And you give John direction, you say, well, John, we need you to clean up these 3 sections and bring it back to us. Because you really want the superintendent to do the work, you don't wanna sit and write a policy. You wanna direct him in what it is that you want cleared up, and he'll propose some alternatives for you on how to clear it up, and then you vote to adopt the policy.
And it would all be done at a public meeting.
All
It's
in a
all done
public
in public
In
meeting.
public.
Policies are open session.
And a lot of times, what I would do if I'm cleaning up a policy, I probably will bring our attorney in as well and say, hey, will you read through this too?
Yep.
Make sure that I'm following the law, make sure what I've written is accurate. And so that perspective is normally brought into the process as well.
And you would encourage some outside input from your audience.
That would be done, because typically when you bring policy, you have 2 readings. You have your first reading, comes to the board meeting, it's open, there's discussion about it, and then, so there's discussion for public to have at that reading, comes back at it for a second reading at your next board meeting, again, public discussion, and then that's when you vote. You normally wouldn't vote on a policy the first time it comes to the board. It would come to the board, discussion, come to the board a second time, and then that's when you would vote.
In the public comment is really input for you. In part, as you make your decision, you're listening to what the public has to say, but ultimately, it's about what the board as a whole, majority, votes to do also.
I had an experience my first year on the board with this chain of the command. My grandson was at Brookside, our elementary school, and it was a very hot day, and I was volunteering in his classroom, and a couple teachers came to me, because they knew I was on the board, and said, there's only one drinking fountain operating in this whole school site, and it's really hot, the kids need water. And so I realized that it wasn't my job to go complain to maintenance, it wasn't my job to go get the maintenance guy and bring him over. It was my job to talk to the superintendent and say, this is critical, it needs to get solved now.
Yeah,
And not
and
next week, it needs to get
emergency
solved.
situation like something
Right,
like that,
right.
a phone call to the superintendent makes sense.
Right.
Hey, I've heard this, or I've witnessed this, you need to know about it. And I would assume the superintendent would say,
I have the same sentiment.
yeah, you're right, I think we need a little more water out there,
Right.
and get maintenance out there to get a drinking fountain
Right.
fixed. But that would be the proper way to
Follow
go.
through to make sure, like at the end of the day, to follow through with the superintendent to make sure that it was,
Well, and my assumption is actually the superintendent would follow back with you.
right.
You would
Well,
make
I
the,
can't remember how that happened,
Yeah,
but
but-
anyway, you
yeah.
know,
then, a phone call or a text or an email, whatever the right communication method is, saying, hey, we're able to jump on the water fountains, we've got 3 running now,
Right,
something like that. And that communication then, a lot of times would go to the whole board. Because even though you're the one that had the concern,
There should I.
the communication should go out to everybody.
right.
Okay, so, a couple things. I would assume that we're looking at putting together a new vision statement and going over all the old paperwork that none of us have had anything to do with up until now.
Well, yeah, so my thought was we would have a little bit of a conversation about, I don't think it happens in like one meeting, right? It doesn't happen in an hour.
But then we will be working on that.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
stuff.
something to suggest that you may want to think about.
The other thing was that we had an emergency over the weekend, not involving our staff, but one of the teachers at the younger charter school, who died on Sunday, and her 9-year-old was in her 4th grade class and she taught. It was totally out of the blue. And I contacted one person from the high school, and he already told me that John had been contacted about it, and he knew. Just to give you an idea of how he does, his idea was that he wants to make this district the best in California. I like that.
Right under Placerville, but yeah.
We can talk about that. Maybe we'll split it.
There we go.
But before that day even finished, they had already worked out to get counselors from our schools over to the other school, to work with the people. Money was done, I mean, there was all the stuff that he did. And with the help of other staff that this woman was running and really loved. So the other thing I was gonna say, I think I've forgotten. Oh, there have been other issues with teachers where he's had to investigate. And, one of them was somebody that I'm familiar with, and so he asked what I knew, I told him what I knew about this person, because it was on a totally different reason that I knew her. And he's still investigating on it, but it's being done right. We scored this one.
I think,
What you just shared right there is what
the right way, right?
is what small school districts are all about. Okay, the teacher that passed away was not a teacher in Willits School District. You said it was in the charter.
She was in the charter, but we're over them too.
So I mean, it's
Part of the community.
It's part of the community,
Right.
and that's what small school districts are. Is a lot of times in most small towns, the school district is the center of the town. Things happen at the school district. Things happen at your schools, and so John's position as superintendent is really a community leader, and pulling those resources together and sharing that. And I mean, that's what John is going to do, is be that community leader. And as a district, you pull all of that together, and the district really is the heart and soul of the community.
And I would say, Jennifer, this is the right way to do it.
Yes.
John needs the information, he needs the background, he's not from Willits, so he
Right.
needs some of the background. And like everything, there are, I would say, 3 sides to the story, right? There's the one point of view, the second point of view, and the truth, right? And so his role is to go investigate and find, the saying's a little different, but
Right, I get it.
His role is to go investigate and to handle those day-to-day things as the leader of the district, right? And then it's your role to support him in that process, and then make the final decision when it comes up to your level if there's a question about something that happened in the process. But you're really focused on the policy and the overall direction of the district. And so let's talk about that direction. Right after the agenda, I kind of pulled off your website this vision statement, and I think it's a little bit backwards. When we talk about vision, and I want to show you a little video. Vision is what you see for your district in the future. Like, what is your district 5, 10 years from now? It's not what you're doing today, or what you want to be doing today. It's what is the vision? Just like you said, I want Willits to be the greatest, the best district in California. That's a vision, right? That's the vision. These words are, it's a little too much to be able to digest, right? But when we start pulling from this, we can see that, you know, you've broken it up into these 5 areas: student-centered, safe, health, and school environments, reflective learning community, valuing students, staff, and parents, visionary, collaborative leadership. That's a lot of stuff, right? So what I did is, if you turn a couple pages after that, I thought to myself, okay, if I wanted to come up with something really catchy using some of this, I thought, Willits Unified School District, student-centered, community-driven, future-ready, right? Something like, you want to develop something that you can hang your hat on and really believe and drive in the direction for the district, right? Because it's not so much important for what you do at the table or what John does, but if everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction. We need to create a culture that's behind something, so that that culture drives you to get to the place of saying, this is the best district in California, right? So let me show you just a kind of a quick fun video. How many of you have ever heard Simon Sinek? This guy is, all of his stuff is really great. It's on YouTube. He's, you know, kind of one of these visionary leader folks. And I don't,
all the great leaders, everybody from Martin Luther King to Steve Jobs, every single one of them, those with the capacity to inspire, they will think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to the rest of us. Where the rest of us start with what we do, these great leaders, those with the capacity to inspire and lead great change, all of them always start with why they do what they do. Great leaders are able to paint a picture of a future state that does not yet exist, a world that does not yet exist, and words so clear that we can imagine it ourselves. And if we're driven by that cause, we want to commit ourselves to help build that world. We can imagine it, we can see it, we can paint that picture in our own minds. And if that's the world we want to live in, we will raise our hands and volunteer and commit to help to build it. It doesn't have to be a social movement, but great leaders, even in business, act like social movements. They give us something to believe in, they give us a future state that does not yet exist, and offer us the opportunity to contribute our hard work, our blood, sweat, and tears to help build that world. They serve as a compass. That's what they do. Every single organization on the planet, even our own careers, always function on 3 levels. What we do, how we do it, and why we do it. What we do are the products we make, the services we offer, the things we sell. You know? How we do it are those, whether you call it your unique selling proposition, or your proprietary process, or whatever you want to call it. It's the things that you think make you different or special or stand out from the crowd. But it's this concept of why we do what we do, this purpose, cause, or belief that drives every one of us. Why the company exists in the first place. We don't need another one of whatever you're selling. You know, there's plenty. You know, but why do we need you? You know? And it's not because of how you do it differently or what you do. There's something deeper there. It was the very reason why the company was formed. When organizations start with why, the response they will get from people who believe what they believe will be visceral. It will be deeply personal and in the emotional part of the brain. It will be hard for people to explain why they are so drawn to Southwest Airlines or Harley Davidson or Apple. They'll talk about, oh, it's the design, it's the quality, it's the service. But in the reality, it's deeper than that. It's in the part of the brain that controls behavior, but not language. The best they can sum it is, I don't know, I just love it. But the reality is, it actually is one of the things that helps them define who they are. Apple is able to inspire loyalty amongst customers and employees, and shareholders for that matter, because the way they view themselves is different than the way most other computer companies view themselves. Most other computer companies define themselves by what they do. They make computers. And everything they try to do is in an effort to improve upon that thing. Add more RAM, add more speed, make it blue, you know? Apple defines themselves by why they exist, to challenge the status quo, and a power to the individual, think different. And everything they say and everything they do is to advance that idea. There was mass spontaneous mourning when Steve Jobs died. He's just a CEO of a company. He's a multi-billionaire who flies around in corporate jets. I mean, he's more like the rest of them than he is like us. And yet, we mourn his loss. Fundamentally, what a leader is supposed to do is offer a vision to the people who choose to join and offer them protection. And when people feel that their leaders have their interest in mind, they are rewarded with loyalty, love, innovation, ideas, progress. That's the thing I'm grappling with now, which is how do we create that movement so that in which we come to work, we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel protected, we naturally cooperate as a result, we naturally trust each other as a result, we're committed to working harder, giving loyalty, sharing ideas, driving innovation. All we want to do is contribute. And so how do we create those environments in which we naturally work at our best? That would change our world.
What's this guy's name?
Simon Sinek.
Okay.
It's really, it is very, it's great, and he's got a lot of stuff, and he's got a school and all this stuff, but these little clips you can find on YouTube are very inspiring, and, just change corporation to school, right? And you think about that from the perspective of, like the vision statement that you guys have is more of what we do than why we do it, right? And I'm not suggesting that you guys have to change it, but I'm suggesting that what you want to achieve is what he's talking about, that visceral reaction of saying, I love my schools. I love what's happening in my schools. I want to support. What can I do to help, right? Not just from staff, but from the community at large, right? And the way to do that is to communicate that vision so clearly that people want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of Willits School. They want to bring their kids here, right? Or they're proud to bring their kids here. And they love what's happening in the school. And that takes a collective vision and a collective direction to get there, right? And so
what you're say, what he just said was, he's not recommending you change your vision. I think he's recommending you change your vision. But what he said, but what I think he's saying also is, there needs to be a discussion around a vision. It's time, I think, for the board. You have a brand new superintendent, which means you have a brand new leadership team. It's time to have a discussion at some point around what the vision is, and what is the vision of Willits School District. And once you have that discussion, you might feel, we love what's written here, we want to keep it, or we need to make some modifications, we need to make some changes. But I think an in-depth discussion around vision and what truly is Willits School District all about, I think is at some point going to be an important discussion for the board and for the whole leadership team, including John.
As Simon mentioned, the Apples Think Different posters. When I was teaching, I had two Think Different posters on my wall, one of Gandhi and the other one of Jackie Robinson rounding the base with a white hand reaching out to shake his black hand as he... Anyway, I still have those up in my home office, so,
that's great.
yeah, those two posters mean a lot to me, so.
And
Think
it
Different.
motivates you to want to
Yes,
do something
yes.
different. And so I'm not suggesting we do this right now, but as you start going through this process and thinking about, and maybe as you go home today or over this weekend, some of the questions that when we do visioning exercises with folks, when I do these, think about, what does your ideal district look like 5 to 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And what does that look like? And what kinds of things do you want to see? If you could pick one or two words that you would like used to describe your district by somebody else. Like if somebody else were to describe your district, what words would you want them to be saying about your district, right? And then what are the values in your community that represent you? As a board, what are those values, right? And so because we have some fundamental values that define who we are and what we do, right? And so these are some of the questions. And as a part of that, I always say, we talked a little bit about this why am I a board member? What defines us as a collective board? What defines us as a school district, right? And what defines us as a community, right? And, I was working with a school district down in San Diego County, and they adopted a model that's called Leader in Me, which is a Franklin Covey model, the 7 habits of highly effective people. There's a version for schools, and they had adopted it in the school. And the superintendent decided to buy the book for every single community member, right? And so they distributed the book in the community, and it was funny, the transformation of that whole community. It wasn't just about the school, it was about a transformation about right? And how to develop like the win-win situation, or they have a variety of different things that they talk about as the 7 habits at the school site level, right? And so that they started to transform the whole community in how they thought and how they believed in their school district to be the leader and center of the community. And so those are the kinds of things that you want to think about yourself as a bigger than just running a school site, right? Any questions or thoughts about this?
We've got a couple minutes, we're actually a little ahead of schedule, which is great. So what I would love to hear from everybody here on the second question here. If you were thinking of 1 or 2 words that would describe, if you were talking to a member of the community down at the grocery store, and they said, what is Willits School District all about? What would you say? What are one or 2 words that you would say that Willits School District is all about?
Honestly, my first thought was close-knit. Again, I've worked in larger districts, and there was the kind of sense that, I'm working at one high school of 4 high schools, and frankly, impersonal. And here in a bit, it's partly because, we're a small town, and a lot of us know each other in and outside of our different roles. There's kind of sort of overlapping relationships between people across the board. And again, I taught someone's children who were here, or I know someone I used to work with them together, that sort of thing. And I think that's one of the reasons is I think why I think it's sort of easy. I think it's kind of easier to have a sense of where we are, kind of where we are as a community and where we are as a district, because it's not. People have opinions that we can share, but I think there's it's sort of a smaller group that can talk amongst ourselves, I think.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So, to me, the answer for 1 and 2 would probably be the same, is why I'm a board member, because I care about kids, and what defines us as a board is that we all care about kids, and that's the reason we're on the board. We might see it differently, but at the same time, at the heart of it, we care about kids. And I think that defines us as a school district also, is we care about kids. And one of the things I love about the Willits community is we care about each other. So, and I see that a lot in Willits.
And
People care about each other.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you see it more when tragedy
Yes.
strikes. When the teacher passed away this weekend. It wasn't just the school district, it was local businesses, raffling off free photo shoots, and all the money that was earned was gonna be donated to her family. Meal trains happening, even if you didn't know them, you wanna, send them dinner one night. You see that a lot in this community. People that don't know you are, we're a small community, not everybody knows everybody, but you still see these businesses like going out of their way to try to earn money for this family that's in need. It's just how.
You care about each other.
Yes.
You care about each other. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. You're not just a number. You're individuals. That's great.
I would really like to see people talk about our district as a place where people have integrity and that they believe in equity.
And they feel welcome.
Well, I'm not as into the personal side like that. I really do believe if you're treating everyone as I would expect people to treat one another, then all the rest of that is a part of it. I mean, that just falls in. But if you lack integrity or you're not a real firm believer of equity, then I don't think you'll get any of those things.
There was a fire about 4 or 5 years ago across the street from me. Lady that lived there was Episcopal church. She was old. She had a room in the back of the house. She had a garage that her car went in, and it had a gas water heater. And her gas line had a leak. Water heater started, and the house blew up. Part of the house. The kid from 2 houses down, who was 17, ran to get her out because he knew where she was because he used to visit. He broke the door down because it was locked. He ran into the back, scooped her up out of the dog, and they were told that if he lived 30 seconds later, she would have died. People started coming from the end of the block and the cul-de-sac, and from other parts of town. And first people in line are to respond to the police. Second first thing to respond was a fire truck that was coming back, on its way back from Paradise Fire. And they heard it on the radio call, and they didn't even go back to their station, they just immediately responded to her house. And what combated their experience to some extent in Paradise with all the tragedy was she got out alive, and even got some of her furniture out. But the whole community came together around this woman, and that's what it does. And it does it all the time. I mean, it's not an unusual kind of thing. I like what Paula said, the integrity, equity, equality. No. I like both. No, but I like both. I like both.
Yeah.
Because we are all the same, and the minute we start looking at it that way, we get kinder. That was more than a word or two.
Yeah, that's okay. You didn't have to stay to 2 words, so you're good. So, what I heard across the board was people are important. You know, people are important. We care about people. We care about kids. I mean, we're a school district. We care about kids. But we care about each other. We care about people in the community. When you have those things as kind of your grounding, you can deal with differences. You can have different opinions on things and work through different opinions if you stay grounded in what those important things are as a district, as a community. And Willits is really it's that kind of a community. I mean, I'm hearing it from everybody. Willits is that kind of a community. And so you stay grounded in that, whatever issues are come up. And in school district, issues will come up daily. It will happen. But if that's what you hold on to tight, as a board, you guys can disagree with things and disagree on approaches. But there's such difference, and I know you've heard this term, it's okay to disagree, it's not okay to be disagreeable.
So, I was,
And so so if you keep that grounding of we care about each other and we care about our kids, then let's work through the different ideas and different thought processes we have as we move forward. Sorry.
I grabbed a notebook before I left the house, and I realized there was notes that I took from the last SSDA training, and one of the first things I wrote down is we don't have to agree on everything, it's how we disagree. So,
Very true.
yeah.
Very true, and I think that's a good topic of discussion, and because I sometimes hear districts say, well, we're dysfunctional because we have split votes on everything. And when you think about that, I thought that's not a good way to look at it. It's okay to have split votes. You don't have to be unanimous. In fact, it's ideal if you're not unanimous, if you're having a discussion and you're dialoguing about what it is you're being adopting. And so, everybody needs to feel comfortable that there'll be discussion, that there'll be a vote that doesn't have to be 5-0, and but you know that at the end of the day, it's the decision of the district, and you're gonna support it, even though you may not necessarily agree with it, right? You may not agree with it, but hey, the board took direction and it's going in this direction, right? And then the next time something comes up that's of a similar topic, you raise your concerns again, you may vote against, but you know that, the board majority speaks on behalf of the board, and you have to support the decisions that are made, right?
Yeah, actually, if I might bring up a little issue in the past, you know, part of the thing is, you know, it's like, again, it's nice to have unanimous votes, but I think sometimes it's okay if someone, you know, votes in opposition because they wanna raise a point about something they think is basically not best policy. Paul, you wanna know what mission you?
Not at all. I figure they all know anyway.
Okay, well, part of the thing is, you know, the reality is because we have a genuine shortage of teachers in certain roles, we have a number of students who are being pips and stips. And again, we have, it's one of those things, like, again, you know, math, you know, I am a qualified math teacher, a special ed teacher, and we still, you know, we have a few positions we just happen to be able to fill. And, yeah, and, yeah, again, we've had a couple of things that where, you know, Paula basically, the no vote on, you know.
Every single time.
Yeah, you know,
And it will stay that way.
yeah, because, again, it's one of those things where
It's okay.
it's not best practices to hire pips and stips. I mean, to me, it's like, it's it's the least bad option, you know, of the choices. But I appreciate the fact that Paula is basically kind of saying, yeah, this is, you know, kind of raising the objection because it's something that we're doing and attracting qualified teachers.
Well, I guess on that note, it's great. I think having a split vote, and that's a great example on the pips and stips, and I think a lot of districts across the state have teachers that are teaching on those things.
We have a lot
But-
of districts that don't do that. It has a lot to do with how much time you're able to spend searching out people and PRing your area to a point where they will come.
Well, and that was gonna be my.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm glad you said it, because it was kind of where I was going with it is, you have the disagreement, so, okay, this is how the board voted, now, what are we going to do in the future to improve? If we have 10 teachers on PIPs that we just approved,
It's a small number.
can we at some point have a discussion as a board as to what are our recruiting practices? What are we doing to go out to job fairs? What are we doing to attract teachers? Are we willing to, as a board, and with discussions a lot of times with our unions, are we willing to offer bonuses, hiring bonuses? Are we willing to review our salary schedule and where people come in on the salary schedule? Are we willing to at least have some of these discussions that might attract people? And so I think that it allows for, maybe not at that meeting, but at a future meeting, as we start the recruiting process, to have a discussion of what are we doing to recruit the best and brightest into our district.
It's SSDA's number one priority is supporting school districts with respect to staffing. That's just as part of we have 3 legislative priorities, one of them is staffing, because we have such a challenge all across California in filling vacancies that go years without being filled. Okay, so you're not alone in that. But I will also say that a lot of the success depends on the culture and vision of the district. It's like what we just saw, right? People want to come teach somewhere where the culture is good. Teachers don't want to go to a place that doesn't have a good reputation. And to create that good reputation takes vision, takes hard work, right? And it takes leadership. And once you start turning that corner, you will be one of the districts that doesn't have vacancies because you will draw from every district where the culture is not good, right? And there are people that are leaving urban areas to say, I want to go be in a rural area because I don't wanna teach in these schools anymore. And we can grab those. I wrote a bill to support that transition, to say if somebody leaves an urban district or gets eliminated from, how many RIFs do we hear about? In San Francisco, there were 400 teachers laid off last year. 400 teachers, and we can't find teachers in communities. So we need to support that transition so that we can encourage those teachers to come teach in great places like Willits, right? And so there's a lot to be said about that ties into vision and ties into leadership and changing culture, right?
One of the things where we just started this discussion was you don't always have to have a 5-0 vote. You know, everything that we do in schools is teaching and is learning. And as a board, there is nothing wrong with disagreement. There is nothing wrong with disagreement on the board. When the board is happening, and when those discussions are happening, we are teaching and should be teaching how to do it properly. How to disagree properly. How to have a different opinion and still walk away respecting each other. And so I know that your meetings are videotaped or I know videotape, that's not the right term anymore. But you know they're broadcast. They're broadcast. They're recorded. You have people in the audience. Hopefully, what you want is the ability to continue the teaching process even during a board meeting on how to have good, heartfelt discussions about an important topic, which is our students. Disagree, have a vote, and walk out respecting each other. And if you can do that, you've accomplished a lot as a board. Because you're teaching students in the district and people in the community how it should be done.
It's one of the reasons I left the legal profession. When I started practicing law, you'd go into court, we'd have these battles in court where we would articulate our clients' positions to the judge and we'd debate and argue our heart out. And then the lawyers would walk out and they'd go across the street to the cafe or to the bar and have a drink together and we'd talk about their cases and stuff. And that stopped happening, right? Because it became so contentious that people started hating each other and making it personal. And we really need to stop doing that because what happens is, as Eric says, you have community members that want to send their kids to your school. They sit in a board meeting, they see something that's not what they want for their kids. They won't send their kids, they'll send them to a charter school. Or they'll homeschool them because they say what's going on in that district. What happens at the board table is a reflection of what happens in the schools, right? For them, because they don't know anything else. And so that's so critically important to be able to have very robust conversations about topics that are important to each of you individually, and then come to an agreement at the end of that discussion that reflects the majority direction for the district. You have some thoughts, Paul. You're more than welcome to share them.
I'm practicing quiet, go ahead. It's tough.
Why don't we take just a few minute break, just so everyone gets refresh coffee, restrooms, and then we can just get started again.
So it's 10:29 or 10:30 basically, so 10 minutes?
Perfect.
Okay.
Just so you know, this is not in any way a reduction of my I should have done one past couple of years. Most of it started with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just as slow, fix itself, but she's outstanding, that's the other thing. Okay.
There is, do you use a restroom?
Yeah,
I'm good right now.
I'll use the restroom.
You want to go use the restroom as well?
He's still behind the building.
I know, after all, that's not it.
Okay, right. I like that.
I know, we thought they were nice, and so I intended to leave them up for our secretary meeting, what was happening the following day, and then they just kind of stayed, and yeah, it's been
I like
nice.
it, yeah.
It's nice to see.
what did you say you taught?
Well, I was a special ed teacher initially, and actually,
That's my background, I was special ed.
yeah, well, but, you know, I was living in Sacramento, kind of like a non-publics, and,
Uh-huh.
actually I worked for, Washington Unified in
Okay.
in West Sacramento.
Yep.
But, you know, frankly, after living in greater Sacramento for 10 years, I'm like, okay, I could do this somewhere else. And, so I was, resource teacher in Potter Valley.
Uh-huh.
Then basically got transferred up here, and, but, you know, my first credential was in, social studies.
Okay.
And honestly, you know, I started teaching special ed simply because the job just, you know, I can find a job anywhere, pretty much. And,
Very true.
yeah, but after, you know, since my first credential was in history, and I was in the district long enough, to have, you know, tenure, I actually, you know, actually not just tenure, but, bumping ranks.
Sure.
Yeah, when the world history teacher resigned, I was able to say, hey, I'll slide right in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and because, you know, Jim was right, it's just, you know, special ed is one of the, I'm amazed by people who manage to handle this respite for, you know, decades.
It's a lot. It is a lot, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, I actually got my degree, my initial credential was in social studies, was a social studies composite degree. And then, same thing, the job that was open was special ed. And so that's what I rolled into, special ed position, and loved it, loved what I did for the time, and then got conducted out of the classroom into the administrative role, but loved it. I taught a special ed class, high school special ed class, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, you know.
Loved the kids.
Okay, let me ask you, how big was your caseload job?
Mine was, because You mean? Yeah.
I was listening to talk.
Mhm.
You're at the accent.
Oh, yeah.
I played violin since I was little. I've got an ear for that. And so we're shaking hands and I looked at him and I said, what are the languages do you speak? He's trying to laugh. This good-natured laugh. And he goes, well, my dad was in the military, so they moved us to France. I learned French. Then they moved us to Germany. And so cosmopolitan.
Yep. Yep.
And yet he knows how to be the one in charge and the reporter and have people listen.
Mhm.
So good.
Mhm.
People don't have, you can throw a book about it, you can be an absolute.
Well, it's that those type of things and is it takes time to build that relationship,
Mhm.
but you have to start on day one.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
you start building and working on that relationship and work to the idea
Uh-huh,
that what we want is the same thing.
right.
We both want what's best for our staff, what's best for our kids. We both
We
want
had some
that.
very good ones
And
until Mark, but Mark was here to fix it. And so he had some stuff not fixed.
I thought you wanted to pass.
No, I was gonna grab,
Something tasty.
Is he back yet?
yeah. And yeah,
I'm just getting ready to feed off break. I'm in a training for it.
Yeah, so if like I said, if you can get to that point where you have the same goal.
Hey, I'm on break, but block issue,
Going to the right spot.
release of those funds, so Square should be transferring that. I'm not sure if it will happen when, but yeah, so I was just letting you know,
I like this.
which one? Which one?
The hard-boiled egg.
Oh, Ren,
Yeah.
is she okay?
Healthy. Okay.
Right?
Oh, you,
Long.
you did not do that.
So did you have fun on the site council?
Sorta, I got to decline being on the voting part,
Oh, yeah?
which thrilled me, I didn't wanna vote.
How was your hike?
No, I only wanna watch.
I went to last one.
Well, they,
I
when I got on
agreed,
the site council, they needed.
But,
I don't doubt
They
it.
had a choice.
Exactly, no, I truly trust that, they must have had like 6 people that wanna be involved from the community.
Oh, good.
And, well, yeah, they weren't there, but according to Margaret, she talked to one, and according to, yeah, Diane said she was gonna check into it, but it was the one who sat, she's the one that had a 3rd grader and
We're gonna get some.
was it a
Yeah.
kindergartner
Yeah, I
and a
got it.
3rd grader?
French dip.
Yeah, that one with the brown hair and she was a couple chairs down. And anyway, she knew Lisa wanted to, and then
For what, for the, one of the.
I've already forgotten her name and I've met her now 10 times. But anyway, she sat next to me and she knew a lady who would come. So they said they're gonna put them all on the list and until they get
We had a
you know,
woman.
an agreement, they, all these people would agree to run, so to speak. And they said that, Abby said, regardless, they can all,
Well, we have one coming out.
it'd be good. And so I think they're all gonna participate, which would be really nice, they should. I was sort of surprised with some of the changes they've made, they don't look like they might be in the best interest of schools, but,
Just north of
oh, we'll see.
in Grass Valley.
Yeah, sometimes needs are different, and then there's that concern over money, and especially when they don't get
Her and her board
budgets, I don't
president
know,
are gonna do it together.
that's odd to me, but
That's good.
we'll see. Yeah, it must have been a decision they made, because everyone seemed to think it was kind of normal.
Oh my goodness, look at this, look at this ceiling.
I think the site councils are sort of, the site councils are sort of determined by the state or by the Department of Education.
I thought that at first, and that's why I was kind of curious, because Title I money doesn't come from the state, it comes from the federal government. But yesterday they kept saying it came from the state, so I don't know if they were just misnaming who sends the money, or if they truly didn't know.
Maybe because
And that
it's.
sounds like you know, something you can just like,
Probably.
you know, what are you gonna, we're empowering
I
education.
thought it came from the-
She's got us going, okay.
Okay. You got me with egg in the mouth.
As long as
Okay.
you don't have egg on your face.
Yeah, right? So let's talk, we started talking about a little bit about governance, but we could start have a little conversation about the roles and responsibilities. These are the 5 roles. I always say when I was practicing law, I would tell the boards, because I represented the boards, the governing boards. I was a district's lawyer and I reported directly to the boards, and I would tell, well, look, we talk about the five things that you do that are the critically important things that you do, which are essentially set the vision, mission, and goals, and adopt board policies, hire and evaluate the superintendent, right? And then you have, you serve as an appeal body, and then you hire the auditor and the legal counsel. It's an interesting thought, but the auditor, you hire the auditor because the auditor is hired to evaluate what's being done at the district as an independent body to review the finances. And so what you were looking at from the perspective of the board is the auditor comes in and reports to you any findings. And then the district, as part of that, is developing a response and a correction plan related to those audit findings. And I always tell people, you really want your auditor to find stuff. It's funny, we have this desire to have clean audits, especially a superintendent or a CBO. I was a CBO and I desperately wanted to have clean audits. But the reality is you want them to find stuff because you always want to improve the district. It's a little bit like a hesitation if they don't find something, because then the question is, are they doing a good job, right? Because they should be digging deep, they should be trying to find stuff so that you are in this continuous process of correction and fixing, right?
So I have a question. I've been on the board 6.5 years, and who we have as an auditor has never come up for discussion. I assume that some previous board voted on our.
Do they come present to the auditor?
Yes, I mean, they come and present to the board, they do a wonderful job. But it's never come up as a discussion as to who we should hire as an auditor. Some previous board did that, I'm sure.
It was over 35 years ago that a previous board did that.
Yeah, let me tell you what happens and so this is why I love doing this, is because, you know, they have, CSBA will tell you things, but they really are designed, they're telling you stuff that happens in urban districts, because that's the majority of the stuff they're getting. What we have in rural communities is we have a really hard time finding auditors. So, and I know of some districts that have not been able to find an auditor that are in very remote areas, and they struggle to keep an auditor employed. And so we don't see a lot of like, oh, we need to hire an auditor, let's do an RFP and let's get them to submit proposals and then we're gonna go pick one, right? We don't get that a lot because there's not a lot of auditors out there doing these things, and the legislature keeps making it harder. They just passed a law that's gonna make, add additional requirements to auditors. And what's gonna happen is we're gonna see it become more expensive to hire auditors and harder to find them, because they have to have new training requirements and things like that. And so it's not all that uncommon not to see it, but you wanna make sure that the contracts get renewed every 3 or 4 years. And so those will come to the board, and that is the act of essentially re-engaging them to continue to be an auditor in your district. I would encourage, if you can get them to come out, even if it's just by Zoom, that they present directly to the board, because that is your opportunity to ask questions.
Right, they do,
Yeah.
One thing to think about when you're looking at auditors, and you might have the same auditing company
Yeah.
that you're contracted with, but sometimes having a different lead auditor that is doing the audit for the district is not a bad thing, because they're coming from a different perspective, a different point of view, and are seeing things sometimes for the first time. If you have the exact same auditor every year for 10 or 12 years, sometimes it becomes a little bit robotic.
Routine.
And so, routine. And so then if you have a different lead auditor, even if it's in the same firm, they might be able to come in and see things from a different angle, because like Yuri said, the important part of an audit is to continue to improve. And so if it becomes so routine, sometimes those things are overseen and might maybe missed because they're doing the same thing every year.
We
So-
used to have some typographical errors that were just continued every single year. That's what alerted us about close to 20 years ago that they needed to look around for someone. And it's because it was just obviously cut and pasted, or whoever wrote it,
Mm.
you'd think would at least pay attention.
That's what you wanna
you
avoid.
know.
That's what you
Yeah.
wanna avoid. You wanna,
Yep.
that's what Eric is talking about, is having a fresh face, look at it. And
Yeah.
from the superintendent's perspective, you kinda want them to do a deep dive, you know, like,
Well, exactly.
you know, you've got a fiscal department, you've got you know, people entering stuff and doing things in a very routine, this is the way we've done it for 25 years. The auditor can say, well, you may be doing it for 25 years, but you really need to change your practice, because this isn't healthy, or this could be an area where there
Yep.
could be problems, right? And so that's and that's why they report it to the board, because that way you want to see the correction plan, and then now you're responsible for ensuring that that correction plan is being implemented. And so that's, the superintendent will often bring back, big thing you know, that's always a big part of audit is ADA reporting, the student attendance reporting. Sometimes if that's not done correctly, you have to have a correction plan, may come back to you and say, this is what we've done to implement the corrections from the audit, and here's what our attendance looks like now, right? Those are the kinds of things you wanna see.
Like Yuri said, there's nothing wrong with findings. There's nothing wrong with findings. What would be concerning as a board member is if you saw the same finding year after year after year, that would be concerning. If you have the same finding 3 years in a row, it's like, okay, there should have been some type of correction plan already put in place and some changes made. Then that would be a little red flag for you. But having a finding, that's just an opportunity to get better.
And then just for kind of our learning, from a learning perspective, the way it works in California is the audit is presented to you and then it's submitted to the state. There are certain findings in there that may cost you money, right? And those are the questions you should be asking when you have a finding. Is there a penalty for this? Does the state assess a penalty? Because, like, for example, expanded learning opportunities, if you don't spend that money correctly, right, the state asks for it back, and that's a penalty. And then you may have already spent it, so you're taking those funds out of your general fund to pay that back, right? And so those are things that you want to be cognizant of as a board, is to ask, is there a penalty related to this audit finding? And as Eric said, most important, you have repeated findings, those are things you need to pay attention to and say, okay, we need to correct this. And, you know, that's where you would direct the superintendent, this needs to be corrected. You don't wanna have the same finding twice, right, or 3 times, even worse. Another area where I like to spend a little bit of time is the labor negotiations. And this is a super complicated area, but you are providing authority to your superintendent or your team to negotiate labor contracts. There are a couple things that I highly and strongly recommend. Never have a board member in labor negotiations. That's not an appropriate model. I've seen it where boards have wanted to sit and observe or sit at the table. It is the worst thing you can do as a governing board, from the perspective of creating really a dysfunction in what is normally a two-party bargaining, because you're basically you're engaging out of a bargaining as an individual. That is not something you have the authority to do as an individual community member. Bargaining should happen between a team that is staff of the district and the bargaining unit folks that they decide they want to bring to the table. And there is usually a provision in the collective bargaining agreement that talks about who's going to be, what the release time is, and all that other stuff. So the complexity that comes up in terms of bargaining is that you are authorizing your superintendent to give some kind of a pay raise, or to give some kind of a benefit to the labor group, right, that has to be costed, right? There is a cost. Everything has a cost. No matter what they tell you, it all has a cost. And so whether it's anything from, we're gonna do the dry cleaning for the uniforms, or we're gonna, give you release time to prep for classes, all of that has a cost. It's incumbent on the staff, the district staff, to develop what that cost is and to share it with you. And you're making a determination that whether you can afford it or not, right? And so it's critical to have the fiscal folks of the district, whether it's your CFO or CEO or whatever business manager, present to you what the impact to the budget is of whatever that you're authorizing your superintendent to give at the table, right? Usually the superintendent will come in and say, look, they're requesting 5%, I think we can do 2%, I need authority to bargain up to 2.5% or something like that, right? And then that's the parameters that you're giving him to go to the table and bargain at the table for.
And I would just add to that is typically that conversation happens before your superintendent or whoever is on the bargaining team goes to the table. That discussion as far as negotiations, as far as what is affordable in the district, sharing some of those, some of the budget data, that kind of stuff, all of that takes place prior to that first time at the table for that bargaining session.
So you mentioned who's at the table so the union is the.
The union is usually the union president. They have a CT, if it's a teacher's, they'll send somebody from the CTA office, like California Teacher Association office, and then they'll have maybe 1 or 2 other unit members or 3 unit members representing different
So
aspects.
somebody from the main union office, and then the president of the, okay.
And they may have like a labor, they may have a negotiations chair.
We don't do that, that's what I'm
No.
asking.
We now have a president that believes in going, but before there were presidents in the association who never did go until the lead negotiator would say, we're clashing heads here. And then the president could go speak with the superintendent, and the two of them come to a maybe agreement. And then that way the president can explain to the cluster, and the superintendent can explain to the other cluster. But, and the team is pretty representative of all the school sites. And there's usually an alternative or two. And in the contract, it's written up that if they choose to invite someone, they certainly may. And that has been before, that there would be a board member who would go and sit, not allowed to talk, and wasn't supposed to go to the caucus but did. But at least the idea was there were such strained relations that the hope was that an independent person could go and look at it and say, well, gosh, maybe if you don't say they're idiots, they'll be a little more pleasant, or this or that, And so ours is kind of been set up, and it's usually pretty functional.
I always say, I think it's a really bad idea to have a board member in the room. And I've done labor negotiations for 25 years, and so, you're circumventing that relationship of trying to work things out, and you're creating an avenue for people to want to go to that is not focused at solving problems at the table. So, and I will say that in small and rural school districts, negotiations is very different than what you see in an urban area where you get strikes and stuff like that. Strikes are very rare in small rural communities because teachers are so vested in the community and so vested towards the kids that there's less likelihood. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, there's less likelihood. And I can tell you that in most of the superintendents I work with want to give the teachers as much money as they can give them because our situation in terms of staffing is so challenging that we need to raise salaries to attract people to come. And so I rarely see a situation where superintendent digs in their heels and says, I don't wanna give them anything, right? Most of them are trying desperately.
Haven't been in Willits off, no.
I wanna add, Jennifer, go ahead, you speak first.
The
and then
other, the other reason I had asked that was because when I was part of SEIU, when I was on the bargaining team, when I was vice president, we had somebody from the actual state SEIU office that came and led them. And then we had the president and the other people that were there. And that doesn't seem to be what,
Oh, no, it happens here.
You have it?
CTA sends their area rep,
And
and they sit and they're supposed to guide how the
okay,
association
and
will
then
deal
we
with
have
things.
our local president and other people from,
Mhm.
okay, thank you, that's what I needed clarity on.
and that,
It varies.
the team varies from district to district. I'll say in my district, there isn't a outside rep that comes in with the teachers association. They don't bring somebody in from CTA. And on the district side, it's me. And that's it, that's all that goes in. But every district has how they've done it over the course of years, and sometimes that needs to be relooked at if it's dysfunctional. If it's working well, it's working well. But what I wanted to say is negotiations start way before you get to the table. Negotiations start from the first day John was hired as superintendent, and how he starts to build that relationship with the union president and with the leadership of the different unions within the district, and have those regular meetings and deal with issues as they come up. And and John knows this. I mean, I had at least monthly meetings with both union presidents on a regular basis. And my assumption is John's probably doing or starting to do something very similar, because it's all really in your small districts. It's about relationships, and it's about trust, and that starts from day one. So when John was hired, that starts from day one. When John was hired, building those relationships, building that trust, because then you can have some difficult conversations. And sometimes you will have difficult conversations when you're at the negotiating table. But as you build that relationship and trust level, you start, and Jennifer and I were just talking about this at the break, you start realizing you have the same goal. You have the same goal as doing everything we can for our staff, doing everything we can for our students. And we might be coming at it from a different angle, but we're trying to get to the same point. And that's done through those, not the conversations at the table, those are done through all of those conversations you have prior to going to the table. And having the union president come to John and say, hey, this is an issue going on at Brookside. And John saying, thank you for bringing that to me, I'll take care of that. And he jumps in, fixes whatever that issue might be. It could be as simple as getting all those water fountains working, whatever it might be, but John, that then is that one little step of building the trust, and another little step of building the trust, which then allows you to sit down at negotiation, have some difficult conversations, but knowing you're still working towards that same end goal.
Going back to having a board member sit in on negotiations, when Paul and I were both elected, a sitting board member lost the election. And I understand that the union had their sights on him because he had participated in negotiations. And they weren't happy with him, and he got unseated, so on the board. So, anyway.
And I say this, and I'll say this a little bit lightly, right? Because it's not something I really believe happens, but some of the strategy behind labor negotiations from the labor side is to create division The minute the board is split, they've won, because then they are picking off board members to get whatever it is that they want. To the extent that they can drive a wedge between the board and the superintendent, that is an effective strategy for them, because then they're creating that tension at the board level so that they can get what they want, right? And so, and I say it lightly because I don't think it happens as much in a small rural community as it does more so in an urban area where people don't, there's not a community the way we think of a community. The people don't interact daily. We don't go to the store and run into people the way we do in a small community, right? And so, a tactic for labor is to have a board member to be the target. And that's why they want you to sit in those meetings, so that you can see and so you can, and they do start off a little contentious, and even though you have that good relationship, especially if they bring an outsider in, they come in and they want to pound, because they want you to break, and they want you to take a position or soften your position, right? It doesn't always happen that way in a small community, but especially if you've got that relationship, and if you're good at that relationship, they don't want to bring the outsider in, because that's not a comfortable situation. They've had a good relationship with the superintendent, and they have this outsider come in and start saying nasty things about administration and this and that, and hey, well, that's not happening here in our district, and then the next time, they say, we don't want them here. And that's what we want to achieve, because then you've developed that culture of cooperation, collaboration, and like I said, it's tough out there, right? Teachers aren't well paid, generally, right? And inflation is out of control, and when you go to the grocery store, you go to Starbucks and it costs you $6 to get a cup of coffee, like, that's impacting particularly your classified more than anything else, but also your teachers. And so we want them to be happy, and we want them to not have the stress of life, because that makes them better teachers, makes them be more effective in the classroom. And so we want to try to keep up the best we can, but that is a balancing act from the perspective of finances. The state doesn't give us enough money to keep up. And so you've got to balance. But we know that most districts, 85% of your budget goes to staff, because we're in the people business. We educate through people, so that's normal, 85%. So that means that 85% of every dollar goes to a person's salary, right? And that's because healthcare's out of control, that's because retirement funds are out of control, everything's out of control, and so that still the teacher isn't getting all of it, right? They're getting it through benefits and things, but they're not taking cash home. And even though you give them a raise, they may actually be making less money because that health insurance went up, or the retirement payment went up, or, so that it's a challenging scenario. But that's why your fiscal person has got to be good, and you've got to work with them to understand. And so that's the kind of thing that you can have as a budget when you go into budget, right? Is to understand, does the budget include a pay raise? It often, the CBOs don't put it in there, because the minute you put it in there, you've negotiated against yourself, right? They know exactly what you want, what you're gonna give. So CBOs kind of tend to not hide it, but it's just not built into the budget in the HR perspective. Then they've got to go back and work through the budget and try to squeeze enough money to put it into the payroll side of things, right? And so understanding that and having those conversations with your superintendent, saying, okay, so I know it's not in the budget, but what are we gonna be able to do for our staff this year, right? And I'm telling you, John, you're probably thinking about it all the time. I want to reward my staff, I want them to feel good. What can I do to get them to feel good about what they're doing, right?
And just on that, I'll just real brief. You don't want, when your CBO brings the budget for you to approve, you don't want them to have anticipated any type of raise in that budget. That's not good budget tactics, that's not good budgeting, because you haven't finalized negotiations. And until the signatures are on that piece of paper, the budget is what is approved prior to signatures.
you usually can't. I'm talking from the CBO perspective. The state has all these new requirements, everything that they implement, you're usually trying to get the budget to actually balance. And because of all the different stuff that's happening, right? All the changes and everything. And it's not until you get there that you say, okay, where can I squeeze? Where can I take money and move it into salaries, right? And that is the sort of the
And then,
process.
but John should be able to bring to you, or the CBO, however you guys do that in closed session, and share with you, if we do a 1%, this is what it's going this is what's gonna happen to the budget. If we do a 2%, if we do a 2.5, this is what's gonna happen in the budget. And that should all be available, shared in closed session as you're discussing negotiations.
Just because I have to make clear the flip side of what you said, you know, negotiators are trained to think exactly like you said, only about the administration and the board. The board has more of a reputation of being in favor of the administration than it has in being in favor of teachers or any staff. Not just because it has to be adversarial, but because the board is supposed to be so economically sound when they think, and that is often seen as hiding money. I don't want you to know that the state just gave us a 2.6 or whatever, so we'll just leave that out of our budget. That's not looked at like.
We never leave anything out.
No, you don't leave money out of the
You don't
budget.
leave it out, but you do your best to not have a budget that includes it. And that in and of itself is already a step that says, gosh, why didn't you put that there? We all had to read or listen or whatever, and we know that it is. An association doesn't find fault with someone saying, okay, well, we have this money, but you need to remember the building is falling down over there, and we need a chunk of money set to the side. Everyone will believe that. But to say, we have no money for you, is a real strike. And if we go into negotiations believing that, you know, it has to be set up adversarially, or that it has to be, this is what's in the best interest of our students, it has to be a real, honest performance. You know, I mean, it really does.
It should be always, everything that is presented at negotiations, in a board meeting, should be 100% transparent.
Accurate.
Exactly.
And 100% accurate.
Oh,
It should,
okay.
there should never be anything hidden in anything.
So,
Oh, okay, maybe I didn't.
I think what I said was, you should not anticipate in your budget that you were going to give this raise. That should, I mean, when the budget is brought to you in
it is a current
May and
projection.
June,
Mhm.
It's a projection
you
based
cannot
on what you
project
have.
what you're going to give, and already put that into the budget.
The budget is a,
Maybe our contract language, we now have a part that says there will be a percentage.
Then
Of
if
the-
that's in the
then
contract.
if that's in the
that's
contract,
budgeted.
oh yeah,
That gets
oh, most
budgeted.
definitely.
So if you have an automatic
I'm sorry,
increase.
I often don't think,
No,
I often believe everybody knows what we know.
I would give you a little bit of a different perspective, because that narrative that you said, the us versus them, is
Yeah,
a
that's
very
bad.
urban narrative that does not happen as it does happen, but not as frequently, because we don't see the us versus them, and I can tell you from the CBO's perspective, in a rural community, in a small district, you're struggling to figure out how to meet the needs of the district financially. Like, you're looking at plumbing problems, you're looking at a roof that needs to be repaired, you're looking at, you know, the state's telling you you have to implement a new curriculum that you haven't purchased, and they're not giving you the money to do it. It's just like the governor didn't give the money to do the, you know, the ethnic studies. And so, but you're mandated to do these things, and you have to pull money from, so you're budgeting, and your budget is a reflection, and I guarantee you there's very few districts, basic aid districts are probably the exception, where you're showing a positive ending fund balance, where you actually have more money than you can spend. That's so rare. So what we're doing often is just trying to refunnel money into different, so like, okay, we're not gonna do the roof this year because we've gotta do a 2% raise. It's always and it's never an administration versus a union opinion, because we don't, and in small communities, we don't see it that way. We just see that we have staff, and we need to pay our staff, and we need to get, and we're always trying to recruit, and the only way to recruit is to increase salaries. I can tell you, we talk about that every day, and every call I get is about, I can't find staff and I can't raise my salaries anymore because I'm out of money. And so, those are the conversations. The narrative that you mentioned is a very common big district narrative because they're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. And there is a little bit of a shell game that goes on there because there's so many buckets to put money in. In small communities, there's just a handful, and Eric will tell you, like, you've gotta maintain your campus. You've gotta maintain it, and the state doesn't give you any money to maintain your campus, right? Every dollar goes to kids, right? And so that maintenance thing is you're pulling money out of wherever bucket you can, and you're getting creative in when you're doing it. So, I gotta put up a new track, well, can I use the ELOP monies to do that track, right? Whatever it is, right? And we're playing these games because we just don't have any extra money.
Well, and I've sat here for over 2 hours now listening to you guys talk and share. You guys care. You care about this community, you care about this district. The idea that you wouldn't want to provide as large of a salary increase to staff and people in this district, that's just not true. Because you can tell right here listening to you that you want to do what's best for the people that serve the kids here. And so I think if that is a mentality coming into negotiations, I think that's definitely a misnomer. Just because you guys do care about the people that work and serve serve your kids.
We do care about our kids. But my first year on the board, 2 years ago, I walked in on the negotiations that were going on, and there were board members that were it was a split board, and I ended up being the deciding vote. The teachers hadn't had raises in a really long time, and compared to other districts around here, they were not getting paid much. We had teachers that were threatening to find work in other areas, and they weren't joking. I've been in too many negotiations to know that they were not joking.
Well, I'm just talking about who I'm hearing
Right.
from today.
No, I know, but it changed, and we did provide that, but we're still recovering from that, because it
It
took
takes
us down
time.
to that,
Yeah.
just below that 3%. I mean, it was hairy.
She said we're below it. Did you just say we're below the 3%?
Oh, originally, we were just slightly below it.
No,
That-
we were projected to be below it, and what happened instead is that we are at 5% in our reserve. We just
But-
did that.
But when we first did it, it wasn't
The
5%.
projection was
Right.
that it was gonna be a 3% in 3 years. Or a little
No,
less,
that-
it would be
that-
2.7, but it doesn't matter, it's just that there are reasons why everything gets a little contentious sometimes, is because you can look at the same numbers and go, oh my gosh, and they don't come out to the same answers. But it's true, the district has worked to take us from the very bottom of the pile to equal.
Right.
Well, and that will help build and grow that trust level,
It does, it did.
you know? And like I said, I don't know what happened in previous boards. What I'm seeing is what I'm seeing right now with this
Right.
board. And the concern and care that you guys have. And that is what needs to be projected into negotiations, and that's John's job to do that.
And you want to stay out of it being an emotional issue. It's not an emotional, like in terms of the contentiousness, as a board, you're not here to make an emotional, for it to be an emotional anger or frustration. You're here to make a very thoughtful decision about what you can do as a community, and what you can't do, and whether you want to dip into that reserve for a year, or what, and how can you turn that around? And those are the conversations that you have with your staff, is to say, okay, if we did 3% and we did do how long would it take us to recover from that? And, you know, or can we stretch it out over a couple of years? Those are the conversations that you wanna have as the dialogue in closed session, right? Not with the union, because you want the district to get there. And they're the ones who are, I wouldn't say, always trained, but they're the ones who are built the relationships and are using their relationships to try to get from point A to point B without outside influences.
And then that's John's job to then carry that message.
So,
If John is your district negotiator, is that how you have it set up?
Yeah.
Yes.
so I, started my employment with the district in the 1980s, and, I have always seen the Willits Teachers Association, I'm talking about the union, not the teachers, but the Willits Teachers Association always takes an us versus them attitude towards the administration in the district. And I don't think it's changed in all these years, so, you said that's not
I find it-
common in small
it's
districts,
not
but
common.
it's common here.
But it may be because of some outside influences. And I think that if you give John the opportunity to try to change that culture, it happens one individual at a time.
Right.
And it's the listening, right? The caring. I know John cares, because just the little bit I know about him, he cares about people. And it just is gonna take a little bit of time for him to warm some of those hearts that have been entrenched because of whatever the history is. And just one person at a time change the culture. And when he does change that culture, you will see there will be a change in negotiations, and there will be a change in the narrative about the us versus them. Because he's not gonna approach it from the us versus them, because that's a winner and a loser. There's no win-win. There's always a winner and a loser in that kind of a dialogue. And so you gotta change the narrative so that there is a win-win. How do we all win? How do kids win, right? And you've hired him because you saw something in him that you think is different from what you've had in the past. You just gotta let him go do that magic, right? And support him as he does that magic, right?
And it takes time.
It does take time.
It takes time.
David, did you wanna say
So
something?
I was gonna say, actually, part of it is, again, just individual personalities and, again, also perception. But at the same time, probably says, again, like, we, as a board, we have an interest in recruitment and retention.
Yeah.
So again, it's really, to me, again, it's as far as being fiscally responsible, that has to be underlying our decisions. But we have incentive to actually try and make sure that our salaries are competitive with the neighboring districts.
Or higher.
Yeah.
If you wanna draw them, you gotta be higher.
Yeah.
And there's a natural desire to push in that direction. And, let me say something. In public education, there will always be one or two unhappy people. It just, it's a part of the nature of what we do, right? But you know what, and I heard something the other day, and maybe you've heard the same thing, Eric, is when you focus your attention on the two unhappy people, you focus all of your attention in the wrong place. You have to focus your attention on those that are actually doing good work and achieving, and because if you neglect those, they leave, right? And the ones that are unhappy will never leave because you're giving them the attention that they're looking for. And so you've gotta focus on the folks that are doing, that you don't wanna lose, the ones that are happy, that are excited, that wanna be a part of something great, right? And let the people be that are unhappy. It's a bell curve, right? And what you really wanna do is you wanna move the people that are slightly on the downside, you wanna move them up to the upside, right? And there'll always be the one or two that at the bottom, that you'll never change. And you just hope that at some point they decide that they wanna retire, or they wanna move on. And then you replace them with people that are focused on doing great work, right? And I don't mean that as a negative about anybody, I really don't. But there are some people it's innate in their personality to always look at the glass half empty versus those that look at the glass half full. And you're not gonna fill the glass for them. And so focus on the good, right? And I don't mean that as an insult to anybody, I really don't, right? Let me change topics for just a second, because I want to talk about that vision setting, because I think that's like what we talked about earlier. And I want to give you guys the focus of the LCAP. What you don't want to do is have separate visions for separate things, because that's not the way to run a district. And so part of what you have to do, and this is one of those important, this vision setting, approving the LCAP is now in California one of the most important things you do, because that is theoretically your strategic plan. You want this vision and your policy to be aligned with this. And the other thing I would say is, as you evaluate your superintendent, right, you don't want to set a separate set of goals for him, right? You want this LCAP and the vision for your district to be your goals for your superintendent, because you're aligning your district behind one message and one direction. Now, doesn't mean you can't add additional things. You know, you can say, you're a new superintendent, I want you to go get some professional learning or X, Y, and Z. That doesn't have to be a part of your LCAP. But it is, in a sense, aligned to it, because you want him to grow and to continue to implement an effective LCAP, right? Any questions on it? Because the LCAP is it's a huge document. It's a huge document. It's unwieldy. But if you look at it, extract the goals and actions, right? Usually districts have no more, I would say don't have more than 3, maybe 4 at the most goals. And then, your actions under each of those, that's your strategic plan. That should reflect your vision. Whatever's in there should be what's your vision for the district. It should be giving you in the direction of taking your district to the vision.
And also with the LCAP is my goal to present to the board in December, January to see where we are on the LCAP, how we're moving forward to achieve.
That is your update.
So that's my update there, so
And-
once a year, so.
And think about it from the perspective of evaluating his performance. He's presenting to you how he's doing in moving the district forward with the LCAP, right? And he's got those actions all are very measurable, concrete actions that have to be accomplished. And so it makes it very easy to say, are we moving the district forward? And, you know, if we're not, what are the issues that are preventing us from moving forward, and how do we adjust the LCAP to continue moving forward, right? I'm a big proponent of this. We were one of the first districts when I was in the district that I was a CBO, is to just say, screw the state, like what the state's telling us, we're gonna make the LCAP our strategic plan. And so at first the LCAP started, it was just your supplemental concentration grant funding, which is just the unduplicated count, the programs that were designed around unduplicated count kids. And we just said, if we're gonna write this crazy state document, right? We're gonna make it our strategic plan. And we just created a strategic plan around what it was we wanted to accomplish as a district. And then we folded in the unduplicated count kids as a part of it, but it was the overall vision of what is our program, what do our programs look like? What do our facilities look like? And what do we want them to look like, right? And so that you could, and it's super easy, what is our community relations like? How are we communicating with the community, and how are we involving the community in what we're doing in the schools, right? And so, and unfortunately, they're 3-year cycles. And I say unfortunately, but it doesn't mean you can't change your LCAP, but it is harder to change it when you're midstream in a 3-year cycle. John knows this because you're trying to keep your metrics the same. But when you get to that 3rd year, that's the opportunity to say, okay, let's align this to what we want to accomplish. And one great activity, and I'll recommend this, John, I know you're gonna kick me later for having recommended this, but a lot of districts now are creating what they call the profile of a graduate. It's a very interesting exercise. It's when somebody graduates from high school, what are the qualities you want that individual to have? And so you go through this exercise, and it's a community engagement exercise. You're engaging your community, you're engaging your teachers, and you're defining what that student looks like when they graduate from high school and what they become. And then you can measure your success in what your graduating goal, so you can have like an exit interview of your kids as they come out of high school. And we're small enough communities that we can do this very easily, right? Is to interview them and say, did I make the mark? Did I hit the mark of what that profile of that kid looks like? And I say, if we do this in small communities, we can become very effective, right? Like, do we want to instill the desire to stay in our community, right? As a characteristic of a graduate. Do we want to instill and encourage folks to not go to LA, to San Francisco, but to stay in our, and have our community flourish? That could be one of the characteristics of a graduate of Willits High School, right? And that can run through the whole K-12 or TK now 12 strand, or if you do dual enrollment, through the whole K-14 strand, right? So there's some like really creative, cool things you can do with that.
So, part of what Willits High School graduates have to do is have a senior interview in order to graduate. And I participated in the senior interviews as an interviewer for years, and I'm always deeply impressed with the kids that I interview.
There you go.
Whatever their goal is, whatever, you know, if they're going on to college or they're going, you know, I'm always impressed with how, what kinds of kids we're graduating.
And do you see a trend of certain characteristics that are unique to what the high school is teaching these kids? Like, it would be interesting to like, as you think about it, are there some characteristics that are you could say are Willits unique?
Oh, that's interesting, I have to think about that.
Yeah, I participated this last year on senior interviews, and it was really cool to be part of. But yeah, they asked me to come back this year, and now that'll be in the back of my head when I'm doing it, so. Yeah.
Or are there things that you're not seeing that you would like to see, right?
Yeah.
You know, career readiness could be one, right?
See,
It doesn't have to be college, but
I always ask
career
them,
readiness.
if, since you're getting ready to graduate, what would be your one advice that you would give to an incoming freshman? Like, it's always interesting,
To hear what they're-
the answers that they give, like, you know, I would tell them to make sure to take this class with this teacher because, you know, she did a lot for me, or he did a lot. It's really interesting, the different things you get, but
I think it's great
I
that you
always
guys
love
do that.
asking that question, like, what would you give, you know, since you're getting ready to leave, what would be the one piece of advice you would give, you know, an incoming freshman that's just about to start what you're ending? You know, it's really interesting,
That's a great thing that you guys do. I think that's something to be proud of, because I don't think very many districts do that.
it's part of their graduation requirement.
Yeah, that's great. But that means that you're very focused at what you want to achieve in high school, because you actually are being thoughtful about interviewing kids.
Yeah, well, they have a whole senior portfolio. They have to bring in and give to you. You go through it. They have to do job applications, college applications. You know, it's
Letters.
yeah.
It's
Letters.
really impressive that they're.
That is
doing
impressive.
letters.
Yeah.
That is super
That
impressive,
is-
something to be
It's
very
kind
proud
of a
of.
dying skill.
So, but
Yeah.
those are things that you should celebrate in the community, highlight that that's something unique, and so that you create that community pride. It's like we're graduating better high schoolers than any other community around here. But something like that is like, that's unique, right?
Well, that's another thing they do is like senior award night. That's when we, like as like Sober Grad president, I give scholarships out for the kids that have donated the most time. That's how they can earn
Community
scholarships from
service.
me, is by, you know, the more that you volunteer is when you get bigger scholarships from Sober Grad.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to recognize those students that have put in the time and the effort, and, you know, kind of rewards and makes it like a fun thing to do.
Service-oriented.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Because even though it's, you know, at certain businesses and certain things, they give you a specific award. If you donated time to their issues, then you get the award. But that's one that kind of subliminally, well, you know that word. Anyway, that they do teach service is good. Free service is better. It makes you a human being, and it's rewarded. Now that they're young, they need the money, but as they grow up, they realize, oh yeah, I used to volunteer, and it keeps a part of them.
And it gives back to the community.
Exactly.
Well, and then, you know,
Teaches them them how important it is to give back to the community.
Well, and then I had a student that graduated 2 years ago actually come to me and ask if he could join my sober grad board. So now I have a student that
Fantastic.
was once one of my volunteers that I ended up
Uh-huh.
giving a scholarship to, is now part of my board and helps.
That's fantastic, yeah, that's great.
So you guys have a lot of things to be proud of, right? I mean,
So we have, there's a young man who graduated from Willits High, I think, not last year, but the year before. He was president of the student body or president of the senior class, I'm not sure which. But anyway, he plans on running for the school board in the next election.
All right.
He was senior class.
That's,
Huh?
He was student body president.
Student body president.
Yeah.
okay, so just real quickly, I mean, most of this sounds like you guys have some familiarity with already, but we talk about the role of the superintendent, and there's some key things.
Thank you.
I always say, just think, if it isn't one of those 5 things, it probably belongs to the superintendent, right? Because it's not something we should be involved in, but, you know, the daily operations, you hire the superintendent, you don't hire anybody else in the district, so you don't evaluate, you don't assess, you don't, all of that is done by the superintendent. So he oversees the employees, he makes decisions related to the employees. Some of that comes up to you in your role as sort of the judiciary kind of role of making adjudicatory decisions. But everything is really starts with him, and so it needs to go through him. When we talk about policies and budgets, you adopt the budgets, you adopt the policies, but really, they're proposed by the superintendent, they're drafted by the superintendent. Doesn't mean you can't give them direction, you give them direction.
Your screen's
But-
blue there, Yuri.
He should be the one drafting them, right? He should be the one proposing them, because he's the one that's gotta implement them, and so he needs to be able to draft something that's workable, right? When you make a decision about something and you're directing the superintendent, he's the one implementing. You think about it kind of as the executive branch of government, right? Congress makes the law, the president implements the law. Same kind of thing, generally. You as the board, or like the legislative body, you make the decisions about direction, and he implements the direction or enforces the policies, right? And then he's reporting to you. He's reporting all of his activities to you so that you can make effective decisions. You can make better decisions, right? He's communicating that information to you so that you have a full amount of information when you're making a decision, right? Any questions about the role of the superintendent?
I just want to say that I've worked under, John's the 3rd superintendent I've worked under, and his communication to the board every Friday is just
A+.
A+.
I tell you, he learned from the best.
I would say, I think communication is a huge, and let's
talk about
talk about communication a little bit. Because for you to continue to trust John and what he's doing, communication is key in that process. So what are things as board members you want to be communicated about? What are those things, because you could say, oh, I want to be communicated about everything, and really you don't. But what are those things that are really important that you want to be communicated about? What are those things that are good for him to put in his weekly update? What are those things that I need to be communicated sooner? Because this is something that's going to be pushed out. This is something that's going through the community right now. I'm going to be stopped at the grocery store, that kind of thing. Have you communicated to John what are those different things that are important for him to communicate weekly, and what are those things that are important for him to be communicating immediately to you? And then the other thing just to think about is what is the best way for him to communicate to you? Because I will say, I have board members that I have to communicate in a different way to. Because I have some board members that I know will never open an email. So if email is the way that I communicate to them, they're not gonna get the information. But if I text that person, text is how it works for them. And so texting works really well, and they get the same information. So, a couple things to think about. One, communicate with John how it's best to communicate with you. But what are those things that do need to be communicated? And what are some of those things?
Okay, actually, at this point, I've been, I have an answer for that, sounds like the problem is actually I would, get to the point when I actually have to leave for. So again, I apologize for not sticking around for the conversation, but unfortunately, so, I really can't wait. Okay, well, thank you all, and,
Appreciate it, David. Thank you so much.
David, thank you for being here.
okay, go.
So, for me, it's if there's an emergency of some kind where people in the community might contact me, because I know a lot of people in the community. And then, that way at least I know what I can or cannot say. But I can tell people that things are being handled. Good news is always welcome. And other than that, it's pretty thorough. It's
Good.
Some of the communication that was done, for instance, the thing that happened last weekend, communication was to the board right away. So, and, yeah, that will happen, so, and all the things that happen, sometimes there's communication during the week on issues that might arise to their attention when they walk on the Safeway and stuff like that, you
You
know,
bet.
so, but I think it's good to have the board to let me know what areas of communication you want me to focus a bit more on, so that I know where, I know some board members, for instance, are very interested with all the educational news and stuff like that, you know, what's on the legislations, or what's going on with the kind of bills and stuff like that, so I always put this in there because things are moving. I'll also put some district highlights in there, and some issues that is being worked on. So, you have all the things you need to add.
I kind of the same with Jennifer. When it comes to anything that's gonna affect the kids or staff in a bad way or bad news, the sooner we know the better, only because I'm very active in the community. I have people, and as you know, John, I've had people call me and email me and message me on Facebook or Instagram, and, you know, I always am like, well, you need to talk to John, and then I, as you know, like I said before, I call John and say, hey, just so you know, here's a heads up, this person contacted me regarding blankety blank. I told him to contact you, but the sooner we know that something's going on,
Right.
the better. I mean, there's definitely been times when I think I was the first to contact John and be like, hey, so this issue's already, you're probably gonna be hearing about it, but I just wanted to, you know, I'm always pretty open communication, I think is huge. But
Well, I think the thing to always remember is this idea of no surprises. The idea of no surprises. So if it is something that you don't want to be caught out in the community being asked about something, and you have to say, first I've heard about it. I don't know anything about this. You don't want those surprises. You want to be able to say, I'm aware and I know John's taking care of it.
The other thing,
Or something along that. So no surprise rule, I think, is extremely important.
the other thing I wanna know about is if ICE comes around, because then I wanna be there to help keep them out. Just, that's what I did. Keep the ice out. Yes, bad ice, no ice. Sorry. Absolutely.
But on the other hand, I will say it goes the opposite way as well. There shouldn't be surprises for John either. And so, and a great example is in a board meeting. You know, John shouldn't be hit with some question that he really has no idea is even coming from a board member. You never know what's going to come from the community, but from a board member. tell you, my board members, if they're gonna ask certain questions in a board meeting, I normally know ahead of time these questions are gonna be asked. So that I'm aware and prepared to give a good answer to that question. You want John to look good. You want John to look good in a board meeting. And so there are some questions that you might ask him, you might call him up and say, hey, I'm reading through the board packet. You know, can you give me, what do you mean by this? Or what's really going on with this certain information topic that's on the board agenda? And let them know, I'm going to ask this same question in the board meeting. And that's okay. Because sometimes it's good for that question to be asked, and a lot of times it's good for the community to hear that same information or hear that same answer. But it's always, it's respectful to give John the heads up. I'm gonna ask this question. I just want to let you know. Those kind of things. Yeah.
How do you suggest that he always have a block of time or whatever to be available? I mean, I know he doesn't just sit in his chair and stare at the wall. He's busy probably 120% of his day. And so what do you think makes it the easiest? Writing emails is nice, but sometimes they're misinterpreted because you don't know the tone or whatever.
Email, I will tell you that my philosophy always has been, email is extremely efficient, it's not always effective.
Well, that's true.
You know, because you don't know the tone behind it, you don't know those kind of things. I personally always love face-to-face conversations, if at all possible. It's not always possible, it can't always be, you don't always have the time to do it.
Even telephones won't cut it sometimes.
I think that
It's better than email.
my recommendation to John would be to set up regular
Like office
one-on-one meetings with the board members.
He has that.
Well, how often
And
is regular?
for me, every 6 weeks.
We do better, we get them once a month.
So once a month, yeah, I mean, and for me, every 6 weeks is more on my board member schedules than mine. It's getting it scheduled. And typically, and I'll be honest, we like to go out to lunch, so I normally go out to lunch with each of the board members. And it's a time for us to talk about any and everything they want to talk about. It's more an opportunity for us to get to know each other even better. We probably spend 3/4 of the time talking about their kids, or talking about the trip they're going on, or talking about, you know, a plumbing issue and rentals that they have, and that kind of stuff. We spend 3/4 of the time talking about that kind of stuff, and 1/4 of the time talking about school issues, or what's concerning to them, or what's a priority for them. Lets me get to know what their priorities are, and what's important to each of them. So I would say if you're doing monthly meetings, schedule an hour once a month. I think that's great. I think that's really good. It can be at John's office, or it could be at the local restaurant, or wherever you want to meet. Wherever's a comfortable place to have these discussions. And so, but yeah, once a month I think is really good.
I don't know.
But then if you
Things
want
come up more frequently.
if you want to meet more regularly, I have board members that there are certain times where we meet on a much more regular basis, and then there's other times where it's a long stretch of time between the meetings, depending on the topics that are going on or what's important or what's happening. So if you set up, I would say weekly hour-long meetings is taking a lot of time away from John where
That's
he
what I
belongs.
would think. However,
But if you have, if it's a weekly meeting and it's like a 20-minute drop-in, I don't see that as a problem. A lot of times people don't have time in their days to do
that's
that.
what makes it difficult is scheduling.
They don't. I mean, but as board members, a lot of times you guys don't have time in your day or your week to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour every week sitting one-on-one with John. I mean, you You guys would probably get tired of looking at each other after that much time. You know, but still, you wanna have that one-on-one time, that's important.
It's a balance.
It's a balance.
You guys want John at the school sites. You want him visible, you want him dealing with whatever the day-to-day things are. And so that's the balance, right? But you also need information, so.
You don't want John, I mean, you don't want John sitting in his office 8 hours a day. That is not,
It's not productive.
in my opinion, that's not a superintendent doing his job. He should be out, visible in the community, on campuses. He should be on a campus every single day. I mean, it's great that he's right here next to the campus right here. That's an easy place.
Avoid
That's
that
one of
one.
them.
Easy place for him to get to, but he should be on, my opinion, John should be on every single campus, every single Tuesday. Just the way it is. And my guess is he is. Knowing John the way I do, my guess is he is on every single campus, every single week. And that's what you want.
We have a sit down and do a whole, all the campuses.
Yep, divided.
I know, since I've been on the board this past 6 years, is that I learned from the first superintendent I worked under, worked with, I should say, is that, when I get the agenda, if I have any questions, then I work through the administrative assistant, and in case we have Rochelle, to set up an appointment to go over my questions on the agenda for the board. So when I go into the board meeting, you know, I have some understanding of the things that I have questions about.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, but anyway, I
think that's a great practice to
ask the administrative
have.
assistant, in this case Rochelle, to set up a meeting. So.
So, and I think we'd be a little remiss if we didn't mention that you also have to be very careful with the Brown Act when you're talking about communications behind the, you know, outside of a regular board meeting. And so you guys know that John can communicate information to the 5 of you, whether it's email or individual meetings. What can't happen is you guys can't talk to each other about the same topics. At least not more than one other person, because at the point you've had a conversation with 2 other people, you violated the Brown Act because you're having a dialogue outside of the boardroom about a particular topic that is related to the district. And so when you get emails, you know not to hit reply all, right?
Yes.
These are just some basic rules, right? And you know, when you think about it, it's the right thing, right? What we want is for decisions not to be made behind closed doors. We want the decisions to be actively discussed and talked about. If you guys go and talk about things behind closed doors and then just come here and vote, the public doesn't have the benefit of knowing what the issues were or what the debate and dialogue was about. And so it is the law is well intentioned and designed to involve, or at least have the community listen and see that the decisions are being made in the public, right? I don't know that I need to go a whole lot into the Brown Act unless you guys want Brown Act.
I have one
Yes.
Brown Act question.
Yeah.
However, I've understood from various interpretations of the Brown Act that when there are things that come up on the agenda that people wish to discuss, sometimes I'm of the understanding that people have the right through the Brown Act to ask any questions they may or may not have while that subject is being discussed. Others say, oh no, if you don't do it during public comment, you don't need to do it. And the same thing, and that's just the 2 broadest, or the 2 most frequent that I hear, or that I've read or been told about, things like that. Those oppose one another. Okay, so what is your,
I'll let the lawyer answer that.
Oh, go right.
Well, let's talk about what a meeting is. A meeting is a meeting for the governing board to make decisions. It's not a public meeting.
But see, that's contradicting your book a little bit.
Well, it's not my book, but.
Well, I'm aware of that, and certainly I agree with this guy.
But the meeting is not a meeting for the public it's not a public meeting. It's a meeting of the governing board in public.
Right.
So the meeting is about you guys making decisions, and the public has a right to provide input. They're not asking questions. So there's no obligation for the, and I say obligation because this isn't the way it happens, but there's no obligation for the district to provide the public with answers. The public can provide issues and questions that should be answered by the board in their discussion, but it's not where you're answering to the public on something. The public is just, has the opportunity to provide you information and input their perspective, so that when you make your decision, you've taken into consideration the public's opinion, right? And so and I think there's a lot of confusion about that, right? Now, how does it really happen? I can tell you, in my little district, we had 2 or 3 community members at regulars at our board meetings. And sometimes the board meetings ended up being like just conversations with the public, right? They would stand up and they'd say, hey, but I got this question and this, and we would provide them information because it doesn't, it makes it worse to create a wall, right? And so you want to make sure the public has information and is well informed about the decisions that you're making. So as part of that dialogue, you want to make sure that you're answering the public's questions or providing your perspective on the public's questions, right? But it is not, the public is not a participant in the decision-making process, right?
Okay,
Can I throw something
Yeah.
in here? What, as you run your board meetings, you want to be consistent
Yes.
in how you run your board meetings.
You wanna be
So,
careful.
you wanna be very careful. If the meeting is being run, where you have public comment, you have open public comment, and then you can have public comment on each of the individual items on the agenda when that item comes up.
Actually, that's mandated by law. So you have to,
Right.
you have to allow the public to speak during open comment, just like on any
So
topic.
on any topic they wanna come in and talk on.
And during that period of time, they can address, so like usually, because that's at the beginning of the meeting, you may have something late in the agenda, and you may want to say, well, why don't you make that comment when we take that item up? You can't force them to do that because they want to give you the comment and then leave the meeting. You want to let them do that. I mean, there's
Yes.
just no point in forcing them to stay, you're just making them more and more angry throughout the meeting. But then when you take up an item, you have to open it up for the public to make comments on that particular item.
So that they have an opportunity to respond twice, basically, or to question twice, or to comment twice.
To
Once
share
one
their
is
input,
the-
yeah.
To share input
Yeah.
twice, okay. Well, that's kind of a concern. And another one that comes up is that they vote for us to be on the board. The whole community votes for
Right.
board members, okay? And so if we
And as board
deny
members, you're
them,
representing the whole community.
theoretically, that is what we do, and
Yeah.
certainly some, like in my case, there is a cluster that talks to me constantly, whereas greater than the cluster, I don't hear a lot from unless I happen to see them here or there or wherever. Okay, so I do feel a little more obliged to the cluster than I do to the whole community, but not when it comes to a vote or whatever. You have to be straight, but you have to be knowledgeable. And I don't know how you can do that if you're not listening to what everyone, at least present, has to say. When we used to have board meetings on Zoom, we also got the input from everyone out on Zoom as well. I know that often that'll add an extra 20 or 30 minutes to the board meeting, or an hour, whatever it turns into. But I truly believe that that's why we opted to be on the board, was to spend time once a month or twice a month, however, to get as much input as you can, so that people voting on you are as well informed as they can be. And also everyone knows the same amount of information, or close. And those have been things that teeter-totter a little in our district, and we're just curious.
You're getting input every day.
One would hope.
When you're talking to the community, when you see folks, that you're getting input constantly and you're incorporating that in your decision-making process. The opportunity at the board meeting is just one of a variety of ways the public engages with.
That's real true, except that sometimes people don't pay attention to where an agenda might be posted. And since the whole world doesn't get an agenda, you don't know what's gonna be discussed sometimes.
You're right, well, the
It
whole
should be in
world
the
gets
agenda.
it.
Well,
It should
they
be posted
probably
on your
should.
website.
And they can ask to be a part of the distribution, that's now
Right.
the law.
And that's, yeah, I don't think everyone's aware of the law completely, and that's an issue I've only
Well,
just started to
and do you use
work on.
Parent Square? Like, I remember in my district, we used Parent Square, and every time we posted an agenda, we would send it out to every single member and it was, you know, it was just part of the process. And actually, I think that reduces the amount of people that come to meetings as opposed to
If they know
increases.
what's going on.
Because they feel like they know what's going on. And then following a meeting, we would summarize what happened at the board meeting and we'd send it out in Parent Square. So they would get an agenda on the front end, and on the back end, we'd just have a little summary of, you know, the board took these actions and this, and then sent it out. And I know a lot of districts do that, because I get, my kids' school sends that stuff now too. Board highlights is what they call them.
The one thing I wanted to highlight though was when you're running your board meeting and you have a back and forth with the community,
We gotta do that.
that is great a lot of times when things are good.
Yeah.
And then when things aren't, and you
It's a-
try to tighten it up, that's where I go back to, you need to be consistent. If there's an issue out there that a lot of people want to come talk about, and they're used to the back and forth with the board, and then you tighten it up, then you're not being consistent, you're not treating the community the same way each board meeting. So my recommendation is make sure you are consistent on how you do that. And honestly, the tighter it is, the better. Because at some point, you're going to want to tighten things up. And if you've always been that way, it's just how we always do things. It's what our common practice is.
So, what I wanted to spend maybe a few minutes on is there's a page here that says board protocols. Do you guys have board protocols?
Yeah.
You wanna see?
So,
Yeah, this paper.
I've had so you guys have already, so over the years, I've collected some thoughts on these things from different districts. Not everybody has their own set of protocols, and in particular, like one about, you know, how long should your meetings be? You know, you want to, like, you know,
I think you have a typo in here.
I do, I must.
Because you said remain focused, the board meetings commit to no
Oh,
longer than
yeah.
20, I think it's 90.
It's 2 hours, usually 2
hours.
hours. I would say
Not 20 minutes.
it's I think it meant, it was 120 and it got,
There you go, okay.
I gotta talk to myself about that. So, but
20 would be great.
I always tell folks, we all have an attention span. And the later the meeting goes, especially in the evening, the less tolerance we have for issues. And I think sometimes it's better to say, let's come back tomorrow night and finish these items, than it is to say, let's just go for another 2 hours. And, because I mean, as a lawyer, I attended a meeting once that went till 5 o'clock in the morning. It started at 6 in the evening and went till 5 o'clock in the morning. And at the end of the meeting, they fired their superintendent. And because they were so frustrated, like, there was so much animosity and so many things going on, that they just like, and no good decision is made after a certain period of time. And so the best thing to do is say, let's set a parameter of how long a meeting, an effective meeting is, and let's try to stick to it. And there will be times where you'll have to go a little over, but at least you're thoughtful about it, and you say, if we're gonna go over this, let's maybe reconvene the following day, or let's repost this item for the next meeting. There are other things in here about, you know, staying in your lane, about being respectful to each other, about, you know, just a variety of different things. But I think you shouldn't just adopt somebody else's, right? You should come up with what you believe to be your protocols for running meetings. It looks like you guys have some. I think those are probably something that's really good to say you'll see that the no surprises is in here.
Yep.
That's usually at the top in a lot of boards. Allowing the board president to speak on behalf of the board, so that, there's, and then always, when you're asked for your opinion about something, to say individually, as an individual board member, not as a board, I believe this or that, right? So that it's not misconstrued as being the board said X. And it's okay to say, look, I don't agree with the outcome of this decision, but I stand behind my board in its decision to do X, right? I was the dissenting vote, but we made the decision, we're moving forward in this direction. And those are the appropriate ways to deal with it. The other thing is, I would encourage you, and this one's not in here, but this is something that I heard the other day, we did a board training the other day, when one of the board members said it, and it just resonated with me, it was such a really good comment, is be careful about saying, I will look into that for you. So when a member of the public comes to you and you say, I will look into that for you, you've already overstepped your bounds and your role as a board member, right? The proper response.
The other comment on that, the other thing that I've heard, that it kind of works the same way, is I'll take care of that.
I'll take care of it, yeah. I'll take care of it, or I will look into that. Because you're already doing, as an individual board member, something that's not part of your role, right? The response is to say, you should speak, have you spoken to your principal, have you spoken to your superintendent about this, right? Or just saying, thank you for the information. Now, you can go look into it, but the minute you give the expectation to somebody that you're gonna go address something that you really don't have the authority to address, it's created an expectation, and it's created a situation where the superintendent is gonna have some difficulty resolving, because you've already created an alternative for that person to resolve something, as opposed to having it resolved where it should be resolved.
I know when I get an email from a community member or a staff member with some concern, and I always reply, thank you for sharing your concerns.
Perfect.
Because I think that they need
They need a response.
That they need to know,
yeah.
they need a response, they need
Yeah.
to know that you read it and
Yep.
you heard it.
That's a respectful thing to do.
But
Yeah.
thank you, and that's all I say,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your concerns.
Exactly.
And,
And it's usually enough. And I think most people want to feel like they have a place where they can go deposit information,
or
right?
that they were
Or
heard.
that they're being,
Yeah.
Yes.
heard, right? And I think it's okay for you to say, hey, I got this call, to call John and say, I got this call from this community member, and they're concerned about X, Y, or Z. I'm passing the information along to you
Right.
so that you have this
Right,
information.
yeah, that's part of the process.
It's part of the process, and then John's gonna say, he's gonna probably go reach out to that person and say, hey, I hear you're concerned about this, how can I help you, or tell me about what this issue is, right? And that's kind of the positive and productive way to resolve these concerns and issues. Any questions on? John, you have
No
thoughts? or-
questions, I think it's, we do have the board norms here that we know that we had it for, they have many years there, so it's all in place there, and that speaks up on how, to what are the other norms, and kind of a mini governance handbook to great things, and I think this is great as well, and those, again, as good reviews that, we should be doing yearly, to ensure that, again, it's a lot to absorb, but it's also good to review it once a year.
Do you have a board calendar?
So we're doing the dates.
All the dates?
Yeah.
What comes in certain months?
Yes, we do.
That's huge, that's great, because that's important to kind of know, you can plan, it helps
Anticipate.
John and Rochelle really plan out what's gonna be on the certain board agendas each month, that type of thing, and you can anticipate, okay, I know every February, our SIPSAs are presented to the board, or whatever, our SARCs are presented, or whatever, and so it has that flow to it every single year. And things don't get dropped, because there is so much that the state is requiring now. So many different reports, so many different things that have to come to the board at certain times throughout the year. It's
With
gone up
financial penalties.
exponentially. It's
And
gone
there-
up
and there are financial
exponentially how many reports have to be presented. So So having that laid out on a calendar is extremely important, so that's great, I'm glad you have that.
And those reports have financial penalties.
They do.
If you don't file them, you lose money, or the state wants to take money back.
You don't mind, Jack, we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Just, people are getting lunch, and use
Absolutely.
the bathroom and all that.
Absolutely.
So it's just a 5-minute break and then come back. Is that
Take a 5-minute break, or we're close to being wrapped up too, so. But a 5-minute break's good, I'm good with that.
Yes, please.
I just want to thank you guys for this, for the workshop, and also this book. This book is great.
Well, I
Thank you.
encourage you, and I would love feedback, so the last item in there is that chapter from the book on governance, and I think if you get a minute to read anything in there, it's a short chapter, it's, 7 or 8 pages.
A lot of clarification.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. To understand and, yeah, like what our role is and all that, so that's, I appreciate that. You should take 5 minutes to show that there it is,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
So Rochelle, I got a question for you.
And this is the group.
You said we have a.
yeah, that's great, that's what I heard,
The
Yes.
district office for 6 years.
The local-
and you did a
local sandwich spot, yeah.
No, it's okay, I'm just curious. It's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now you got it.
That's what, I heard it was like
So it's actually not-
phenomenal stuff.
I love home sandwiches, but the
Well, I
club
mean,
is
I
best.
see it.
Is it?
Well, it's part of the district.
They let me.
And their potato soup on
They let you
Wednesdays.
use it?
Good stuff.
Yes.
You know, in the office.
What's the name of the place?
Loose Caboose Cafe.
Loose Caboose.
They've been here for a really long time, family owned. They are involved with the community,
Great.
they do a lot of stuff with the community.
What's your business?
Me and my husband own an automotive shop.
Automotive shop.
Yeah, it's been open for
And my
24
voice
years
should
now.
work, he said, no, I don't want that.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, it allows me to
Yeah.
be involved with kids and not miss anything, so I'm
That's great.
appreciative of it.
My office was, faculty
Oh, okay.
and Trina.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Something to do with my daughter.
I remember when I was a little kid,
Like on these days, we love having.
so we would drive down 101 all the time, and
Oh, yeah.
I would always look forward to Willits.
You love
Willits
that?
was like my favorite place.
One used to go right down my town.
It did,
But I
and
did the
so
bypass.
we would stop every time we took that drive from Riedel down to, I had a family aunt that lived in Santa Rosa. We got to stop in Willits every time, we always got to stop at the A&W root beer
Oh,
place.
it was here when I first
That was,
here.
that was like, I was so excited, because I would know we were getting close to Willits, and I'd be getting all excited, because every time we would stop, and I would get a kid's burger, the root beer float, root bear float every time. Loved that place.
Something I make my.
That, so Willits has, always excited about Willits.
Oh, that's
'Cause
good.
that's my memory right there.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Cloverdale used to have something real similar until they put the bypass in and then no one went by it, but it was so backlogged with traffic.
Oh, yeah.
You could get out of your car,
Yeah.
go up and get your soft cone ice cream,
Uh-huh.
double colored, and then go back, sit in your car, finish it, and then finally the traffic would move.
There you go.
and go on.
Nice.
It was just unreal. And then Willits was next best, because it was another hour away and you had to go to the bathroom and you had to do this and that. But
Yep,
A&W was truly the very best place.
That was amazing,
They
yep.
even used to have people on what are those called? Roller skates that would cruise on over and take the
Yep,
goofy.
yep.
It was
Is there a
hilarious.
specific bread that you eat?
Why'd it close? You know?
What, lack of business, it was
Went out of
cool. I
business.
mean, when all the fast food places come in, we're lucky there's even one that really does cook their food after you ask for it, you know. And that's real good, is it 101 Drive-In, that truly is probably the best place around here, I would go. And there's still, I mean, you can get a hamburger that's this big and has everything in it, it's still $6 or $7. Well, 7, I think they're up to $7 now. But you can go to McDonald's and get one half of that for $15, you know? But, you know, they're about the only one I know of that is a drive-in. Unless I'm wrong, and I kinda, one one drive-in, the one that T, well, I don't know if you know her, but the lady's name is T, some bun or whatever it is. By the high school.
Oh, okay, well, that was.
Yeah, yeah, wherever we are, it's in that direction. That's a major
I
problem
feel
of
like I
mine.
could probably go there more often with my mom.
That's
but
great.
We can do I walk.
It really is good. She's really good as a community supporter for all sorts of
Somebody wants
things
to talk to Olive.
as well. I really admire
Yeah,
her.
that's a good location.
I always run into people to talk to. I don't go down into John Hess check the last time. So,
Yeah.
and one day I ran into the president of the board for the charter schools, and she had some questions for me. And it's just, it's a good community.
Yeah. That's funny, we went, the kids and I walked over there one day and I ran into,
That,
and it was
community
just fun.
family theme is like apparent in everything.
Yeah.
Like we take care of each other. I mean, that, I could see where you guys could have that as sort of a tagline. Willits, where we care about you, or something really simple like that, right?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the shops and businesses, you know, are locally owned by people that went to school here, graduated here. You know, like elementary college, they've been here for
My mom.
74 or 73, I think.
yeah.
Wow.
I remember when they were in the mall. I used to go in there with my dad.
They used to have a
It's
place
like,
at the coast as well.
yeah, yeah.
But that's,
And Tony's
they don't-
also, he also is involved in the fire department.
From, the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I mean, I know he has apartments and things and everything, so he has this and that. I didn't know that he was there.
A lot of them have their hands in production.
It's like a survival thing for me. So, yeah, it's just.
That's great.
Yeah, like we own a business and I
Or, you know, just
run sober grad and then school board.
such a space, it has been such a
Yeah.
space.
Sober grad's
Yeah, I
fun.
used to bring them, you know, they put them in chairs.
You find in towns like this,
Go around, make friends.
people that are willing to do things are do a lot of stuff. They're involved in a lot of things. 'Cause, I mean, as the saying goes, if you want something done, ask somebody that's really busy because
Bill,
Yeah.
make sure it happens.
they're ones
Yeah,
that are they're doers.
When
They're
you've asked
doers.
me to join PTO, it's like, I'm like, I just don't have time right now.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna ask about sober grad?
Is that like a party after prom or?
So it's the night of graduation. We fundraise, we start, when school starts, and we fundraise all year with the senior class and local businesses. The goal, we have to raise 40 grand to put sober grad on. That's the bottom dollar. Every year that this is my 3rd year as being president, we've surpassed that goal by a couple thousand, so it allows us to, like the kids, last year we spent
The lives I
just
don't
under
think.
25,000, and it was all cash prizes and, like prizes that they win the night of. No, that's a separate thing. We do $5,000 in scholarships, but it's called Victor Perez Award, and what it was is we had a 1917 graduate from Willits High School that passed away and left part of his estate to us
Zion too.
that we are allocated to give out scholarships every year for the kids that, the word was Montessori. But we give out a certain amount every year. And this year we actually, I talked them into pulling
They're kind of
50 grand out of it and putting it into an
but
account
they're
that
not
starts
really-
accruing.
they're
Because
not
I mean, we're
really
gonna run out of money at some
Right.
point. I don't want to not be able to give those
Probably
things
should
out.
have.
So
They're
it's kind of like an endowment.
Yeah,
all done
yeah.
with it in their bag.
So
That's great. It's a great event.
it keeps them safe and, well, and even if, you know, every graduate's they'll win a $50 prize or more. You're guaranteed. But if they stay, so our gates open at 9 p.m. and they close at 4 a.m. the next day. If they stay all night, we hand them $100 bill as they walk out the gate. So I mean, like I'm like, if you come and you bring your sleeping bags and you sleep in the quiet room, you're getting paid to sleep.
There you go.
But you know, we have a lot of fun stuff like. We have a mechanical bull usually that comes, and we have like the big blow up obstacle course, and CHP gets involved. They bring their tricycles with the drunk goggles, so they have to do the course. Last year we had Army came in and they did a cornhole tournament where the winning team won $350 to split between the two people. We have fire dancers that come in and we have a DJ all night. Bunch of games, like musical chairs and stuff like that. You'd be surprised on how many. Like the first time we did musical chairs was this last year, and probably over 30 kids ran to play musical chairs. It was like the funniest thing to see. Like, cool. And they played Foursquare, just seniors. So you can bring a guest. But the guest has to pay $10 and they have to be approved through administration. We have security at the gate, cops usually come and, you know, because the whole point is to keep them so safe, you know, so. But yeah, it's a fun time, it's a lot of work, but it's fun.
I love it. I love
Night
the
of is
idea.
always a great, it's the work up to it that you're
Yeah,
like,
it's a lot of work getting there, but then you have the fun.
But the finish line's always the funnest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get to know a lot of the kids, so that's fun.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it,
So how was your sandwich?
Right.
Which one did you have?
Had the something in artichoke, chicken and artichoke. Pesto.
This, the pesto one?
Yeah.
I've had like every one.
It's really good. I usually only eat half the sandwich, I eat the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's good.
I can only eat half.
I do have some
Sister Blues is a great place to eat sandwich for lunch.
Yeah, they do salads and all types of stuff. Their salads,
Yeah, but I
Keep
usually.
that on the radar next time I'm here.
yeah.
Girl, I'm driving
Well,
here.
you know,
Yep, my quarters are the
JD Red
5
House,
quarter
the
and the
big,
101
like,
quarter.
the big JD Red House, it's the big mercantile, it used to be the mall
it's
long time
better
ago.
for
They
me
have really
just
good,
to keep time.
like,
Because I
paninis
didn't realize
and fresh made ice cream. JD Red House. It's
I
like,
saw it.
yes,
And then there was.
my friend owns that, her family owns it. They have really good paninis and sandwiches.
Perfect.
Yeah, the ice
So
cream.
when I get younger, I
Alex.
end up getting older, it's harder to always hear that.
Go try the ice cream.
No,
That road, as much
exactly.
as.
Mushroom ice cream.
Mushroom ice cream, really
And this is.
interesting.
Kind of maple leaf,
Perfect version.
but it's really good. Like the first time I was all, I'm not trying that. That doesn't sound good.
No, it does not sound
It
good.
does kind of like sound like
Cheese and you go.
there's some fairy dust or something.
Or-
Little fairies in it.
But it's really good. But yeah, it's kind of maple leaf.
There's a 101 drive-in here in Willits, which is just a great, it's an old-fashioned drive-in, it's been here forever, and it's very popular.
Yeah, and everything's made to order,
It
so
says
you have
fifty or
to.
whatever it is.
It's not like
Because it's a
McDonald's when you
Right.
order your double cheeseburger. It is made fresh right then, so it takes a minute, but it's totally
That's
worth
what, that,
That's the way it
it's
should be.
always worth it.
It should be that way.
Exactly.
I didn't get to hear it.
Well, Yuri, you wanna wrap this up?
Yep,
All right.
so.
There we go.
I love it. So I think one of the things that I always like to kind of wrap up with is like, if we do governance like we do anything else, how do we measure it? How do we measure if we're being effective? And so some of the and this is just some thinking that I did as I was putting together this type of presentation, is to say, well, what are we looking for, like, right? And I came up with this. It can be very different for you, but I came up with some concepts of like, what does it mean, you know, if we're doing good governance, are our meetings efficient and effective, right? Are we getting deep into the topics? Are we making good decisions? Are we getting good information, right? These are kind of measurements of governance success. Does the community trust us, right? And a lot of that has to do with transparency and in the decision-making process, right? Effective boards maintain a higher community approval rating because of the transparent communications. Okay, these are things I came up with, right? There's not, it can be very different for you, you define it, right? But I talk a lot around the state about superintendent retention. One of the worst things we can do as a school board is have constant turnover in our superintendent. Because if you think about it, everybody comes in with a different vision. It takes, this we have done studies, we've been actually researching this at the Small School District Association. Effective change starts to happen in the 5th year, between 5 and 7 years. If you're flipping your superintendent every 3 years, your district is going backwards. Because it's starting over every time a new superintendent comes in. He's got to build that trust relationship, he's got to build the confidence between the staff, he's got to build culture, and by the time he's getting to somewhere where he's gonna be making some effective change, he leaves, or she leaves, and brings somebody else in and they start over from scratch. So one of the things about effective governance is being effective in retaining your superintendent. If decisions are being made at the right level, and you're staying out of the lane of the superintendent, he's gonna wanna stay longer. If he feels supported, he's gonna wanna stay longer. I as an executive director, I have a board, I've got John D. I've got 14 board members. Eric's one of my board members, right? If they want me to stay, I gotta be happy, right? I gotta enjoy my job, and I gotta feel like they're letting me do what they hired me to do, right? John needs to feel like you're letting him do what you hired him to do. And the minute he feels like you're micromanaging, he's gonna say, well, I gotta go find another district because they don't trust me. Because the sign is trust. If I feel questioned, if I feel like I'm being questioned, I feel like they don't trust me. I feel like my board doesn't trust me. John's gonna feel the same way. Does he feel trusted? And so there's gotta be that trust. It's gotta be both ways. He needs to trust you guys, and you need to trust him. And then you get that retention. And what does that retention do? You have student achievement, right? You want your kids to be learning the right material. You want them to be effective members of our communities, right? You want them to have that knowledge to be successful in their careers. And so if you have good governance, you're gonna have better and higher rates of achievement for students. So it's all wrapped up into the concept of governance and success in governance, right? And so I would encourage you guys to think about those things, right? As you engage and as you do your roles, is what do you want to achieve as a board from the governance perspective? And that means you're gonna evaluate the superintendent, but you should also evaluate your own performance as a board. And I think fortunately or unfortunately, it doesn't really matter, but those conversations have to happen in open session, right? There is no closed session agenda that says a board can evaluate itself. You can evaluate the superintendent in closed session, because it's a personnel item, but you're evaluating yourselves as elected officials. That is a very public function, right? But you should do that. From the perspective, you set your goals. Is John feel supported, right? Does he feel supported? Do we feel like student achievement is improving? Are we keeping our board meetings under 2 hours? Evaluate yourselves. And then say, if you're not achieving those things, how can we do better? How can we be better as a board? And that is that process that we do it individually, right? As individuals, we want to improve our own, so we evaluate ourselves and what we do, and so that we can become better board members, better individuals, better executive director, better superintendent, right?
I was gonna say that it's not just evaluating the board, but evaluating, each board member evaluating themselves to see if they are being effective board members. And, that's really important, I think, to evaluate yourself and look at yourself. And am I treating my other board members in a civil disability? Am I a good listener? I mean, what do I need to improve on as a person? So.
And I would agree with that, and I will say, in our board, we do that, we have a board workshop, once a year. We hold it in February, and at that board workshop is where our board does, they do an individual evaluation, and then they do an evaluation of the board as a whole. And they have that discussion, they have open discussion and dialogue as to what's going well, what are things we wanna work on, what are things we might wanna improve upon as a board. And celebrate those things that are going great too. And so that's on that calendar. It's at our February board workshop every year is that goes on.
Yeah, I would encourage you to do a workshop, whether it's a governance workshop or just an evaluative workshop. Just build that into your regular, schedule of board meetings, because it's an opportunity to have some dialogue. Sometimes our board meetings tend to be very structured. You have agenda item, you take an agenda item, you vote on it. On a workshops, you can have a workshop on facilities, you can have a workshop on instruction, you can have a workshop on, and it's an opportunity to have a discussion, to have a presentation and a discussion, a dialogue, and it gives John an opportunity to hear you guys talk to each other about a particular topic, right?
And there's no action items there. There's no action items that take place. It's just a discussion. It's just an opportunity to share information and share ideas.
And we're fallible, right? We all make mistakes. And acknowledging and recognizing that we make mistakes is a positive thing. It is a productive thing. We will do things that violate this stuff, right? We will do it. It's just a natural human thing. And I think the best thing to do is to acknowledge it, and say, hey, I overstepped. I apologize, I won't do it again. It's an acknowledgement, and it opens that conversation, that dialogue, so that you can continue to improve, right? You continue to be better. And because I tell you, like, it does happen. I have board members that step into my lane, and I have to have a conversation with them and say, hey, like, I was hired to do this. And, that acknowledgement allows us to move forward and not let it spiral continuously out of control, right? I don't know, Eric, if you have any final.
No, I think I've just enjoyed the day. I think it's been a great day, great conversation. So, a place to continue to work from.
I'll tell you, we have some resources that I do. I would be not doing my job if I didn't talk about the resources we have. So we have the governance series, which we have, this year we're doing 6 parts. Every month we have, it starts at 5:30 and then ends at 6:45, so it's an hour and 15 minutes. We're bringing different speakers, and the whole idea, and I may not agree with all of them, but it's important to hear what they have to say.
And this year is totally different than last year.
Totally different than last year. And
Well, last year was really helpful.
yes, and I'm not saying it's just bad, it's just we want to bring some diversity of thought in and have it be an ongoing thing we do every year. And so to keep people involved, we're gonna be changing it up. The difference that we're doing this year is we are going to be offering, if you do all 6, you get the 2 hours of ethics training. So we have a speaker, and then we have a lawyer that does a little bit of the ethics training, so that when you complete it, you do your 2-year FPPC ethics training, and we'll give you a certificate. If you missed the first one, that was last month, we have it recorded, and you can go back and watch it, and you'll get credit for it, right?
And the next one is on the 2nd of October.
The next one is on the 2nd of October, and we have a board president from Eastern Sierra Unified, Steve Wright, and the guy's got a phenomenal story, and he's super engaging and fun. And they have a really good board, cohesive board. He's going to talk a little bit about how do you get to where your board works well together. And so he's going to be really good. And then we have the lawyer do a little bit of ethics training again. Our annual conference this year is March 6th through 8th, or 7th through 10th. Sorry, 7th through the 10th. We have our board meeting on the 6th, and the conference starts on the 7th. We have transformed this annual conference. Before it was more for administrators. we have a whole strand for board members. And last year, we had 140 board members at our conference. So it's a great opportunity to meet other board members, engage and interact on what's going on in different parts of the state with different issues that are happening. So I would encourage you, if you were interested in attending, it's in Sacramento, so it's not too far, and it's a really good opportunity to engage with other small rural school districts, right? And then we've got a new program that I would encourage you to look at. John, this is obviously your recommendation or not. CSBA has a board policy program that is quite voluminous and quite challenging, and the reason for that is because they try to make sure they cover every type of district, whether it's elementary, high school, whether it's small, large, whether it's alternative education, and so it's a little bit overwhelming for small school districts. So we decided to put together a program that is designed for small school districts, and we draft policies and we personalize them for your district, and we host them on our website, so that way you put a link on your website to our website. I offered it, even if you don't use it, as you stay with CSBA, if there are questions about a policy in CSBA and you want to look at the version for small school districts, John would have access to all of our policies, whether you're in the program or not, and then he can compare and bring to you, well, this is what SSBA is doing. And it's a good point of comparison to see, like our independent study policy is 3 pages long, CSBA's is 18 pages long. And so our philosophy is nobody's reading 18 pages worth of independent study, but we do have to have it because the law requires it. So let's design it in a way that's useful for small school districts, right?
Thank you.
And so that's a program that is we're rolling out this year, and so we've got a number of districts that are signing on, and you can go on our website and we have a couple of districts up, so you can go look at the districts and what that looks like for those districts. Right? So those are some of those, and then I will never speak bad about CSBA. Their programs are phenomenal. I encourage, they've got a volume of resources out there. They do some great education and programming, so this is not a us versus them. We fill different spaces and we work together and we're partners in all of this. And so, but we do focus on our smalls, right? We focus on our rural communities. And so those are some of the resources we have. And like I said, like we have the books that we provide our districts and whatever materials you need. We offer this service at cost. In other words, just our travel. And so I know if you were to call any other organization to say, can you come to a board workshop, you were looking at probably $6,000 to $8,000 or $10,000 just to do that. And so this is our service back to our small and rural community. So I encourage you guys to, if you have something positive or nice to say, share that with Eric or share that with the board to let them know what a value this is to you and whether you want us to continue to do this, right? Any questions before we close or any final comments? We had a lot of slides in there that we didn't get to. They're for your just to peruse.
The conversation was what was important, so.
This booklet is great.
Yeah, a lot of clarification for me, so I appreciate that.
Good.
John, anything you want to say to kind of wrap here?
Yeah, I just feel like I want to say thank you for coming your way to us here, and it was an amazing workshop to help the board and I to know where we're going and how we're going to be moving together in the work that we're doing, knowing that the work that we're doing is for the kids. We're here for the kids, and that's what we signed up for. So I say the workshop was amazing. I look forward to doing once a year. And all the guidance in there are amazing that it's going to help us out. So again, you show that picture there. There's a road there.
There's a road there.
So we want to help us to stay in the lane we were supposed to be at while working together. And I like that picture there. I was looking at that. It's like, okay, there's a meaning to that.
And when you guys come up with your vision, please share it with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited to see what you guys do with this. And it brings, like my vision is to empower educational leaders for the success of every student. I was telling John earlier, that's what I stand for. It's my personal motto in terms of my personal why is I want to empower people to do great things, right? And it is now the organization's tagline, right? We say SSTA, we're here to empower educational leaders for the success of every student. Every one of my staff members will say that to you, right? Because that's our vision. And so when you guys report back to me the great things that you're doing, I'll know that I had a little bit of contribution towards that direction and that success, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned. All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
John, I'll give you the extra copies.
Thank you.
You guys are an amazing board.